whole story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News with you. 3 till 6 p.m. Happy Friday. We nearly made it through another working week. And I start today's show with some great news for Great Britain. We have signed a bumper post-Brexit trade deal. What does that really mean? I'll be telling you all about that very, very shortly. In other news, we're going stateside. Yes, because Donald Trump is obviously facing a charge in relation to an alleged payment he made to a porn star. Could it mean that he'll be arrested? What could it mean in terms of an alleged prison sentence? All of this stuff, we'll be telling you about that and much, much more. In other news, though, Just Stop Oil, well, they're going to be sentenced today, supposedly, anyway, after they stormed a Formula One track. What will that mean for their chances of ever protesting again? Will it be just stop protesting? And finally, as well, this is a controversial one, OK? Does a hash brown have any place in a full English? There is, believe it or not, a campaign to get it banned from the plates of breakfast lovers everywhere. I'll be talking about that and much, much more. Stay tuned. Yes, get your emails coming in, ladies and gents. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Also, as well, we're going to be going very shortly to Germany, hopefully, where we're going to see the King Charles visit come to an end and he'll be returning home. So I have all that coming your way and much, much more. But right now, it's your headlines with Rihanna.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 3, your top stories from the GB newsroom. Britain has joined an 11-nation trans-Pacific bloc in its biggest trade deal since leaving the EU.
We've just agreed one of the biggest trade deals of all time.
After nearly 2 years of negotiations, the UK is now part of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal will cut UK tariffs on cheese, cars, chocolate, gin and whisky, and it's expected to boost the economy by £1.8 billion over 10 years. It'll also build new post-Brexit trade links with Brunei and Malaysia. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says the deal provides a good opportunity for growth.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle-class consumers will be in this bloc of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
Meanwhile, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the deal won't help our economy.
Welcome, of course, but recognise the proportion that it actually impacts on our economy. What we need alongside that is a closer trading relationship with the EU. Businesses across the country are crying out for a better deal than the one that the government has put in front of them.
Oscar Pistorius will not be released early from his jail sentence for killing Reeva Steenkamp. The former Paralympian has been denied parole. The 36-year-old's halfway through his 13-year sentence for shooting his girlfriend at his home in South Africa on Valentine's Day in 2013. Ahead of the hearing, Reeva's family said they didn't think Pistorius should be released, as he'd shown no remorse, nor did they feel he'd been rehabilitated. Donald Trump becomes the first former US president to face criminal charges after he was indicted by a grand jury in New York. Last night, his supporters gathered in front of his Florida estate, Mar-a-Lago. New York prosecutors have been investigating the alleged payment of hush money to an adult film star prior to his election in 2016. The payment was legal, but Trump allegedly recorded it as a business expense, which is illegal in New York. Mr. Trump says he's innocent. The Manhattan investigation is one of several legal challenges against the former president. Back here, a man and a woman arrested following a double murder in Cambridgeshire have been released with no further action. A third man remains in custody. The two victims, named locally as 57-year-old Gary Dunmore and his 32-year-old son Josh, died on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether the shootings at separate properties in Sutton and Bluntisham were linked to a custody battle. And two teenagers have been arrested in connection with the death of an elderly woman in Suffolk. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield at 2 p.m. on Saturday after reports 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor following a robbery. Two boys aged 15 and 14, both from the Lowestoft area, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon are due to stand trial in January next year over the death of their baby. The runaway pair from West Sussex have been charged with gross negligence manslaughter. The couple appeared in court earlier. They didn't enter pleas and have been remanded in custody. They've also been charged with concealing the birth of a child and perverting the course of justice. The King and Queen Consort have been serenaded on the red carpet at a reception to celebrate their final day in Germany. King Charles and Camilla have been greeted at the event by a local pipe band performing a traditional Hamburg sea shanty. The royal couple's expected to meet the German entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest later too. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back over to Patrick.
Yes, hello everybody. Now, loads to go out today, but let's head to Hamburg. And the King and Queen Consort, they're rounding off their state visit, historic state visit to Germany. And Cameron joins us, Cameron Walker, our royal reporter. Cameron, what's going on?
A lot, Patrick, is the honest answer. There has been a number of engagements today. It started off with reconciliation following the bomb damage, really, which was done by Britain and Allied forces during World War II. The King mentioned it during his speech at the Bundestag, the German Bundestag, the Parliament, yesterday, that he would be doing that. He visited the Kindertransport Memorial, where the Queen Consort also laid a flower, and that commemorates the 10,000 or so children who were transported via a British initiative, really, to give them safe passage to Britain to escape Nazi persecution. That happened in 1938. The King and Queen Consorts then went to a ceremony, a kind of memorial ceremony, really, at St. Nikolai Church here in Hamburg, which is the kind of bombed out church as it now is. It was bombed in 1943 by the Allied forces, and both King Charles, the British King, and the German President laid wreaths at that particular service. They then came here to Hamburg City Hall, which is where I am, greeted by thousands and thousands of people in the crowd, and the King and Queen Consort spent a lot of time actually going up and down the security barrier here, meeting as many people as possible. The King and Queen Consort then went inside. They signed the Golden Book, as Queen Elizabeth II did during her state visit here in 1965, and even made a surprise balcony appearance on the balcony of the Hamburg's City Hall to an eruption of cheers from the crowds here. It was quite spectacular, despite the pouring rain, which luckily has now stopped, but a number of the crowds were stood here for a good couple of hours waiting for the King and Queen Consort to arrive in the pouring rain. They then split off to do separate engagements involving a school and literacy for the Queen Consort and an environmental boat trip, really, for the King. But now, what's happening right now, and I believe we've got live pictures, is this reception at the Schuppen 52 building, which is near the port in Hamburg. A number of musical performances the King and Queen Consort are being given, and they're being entertained by. 1,000 guests are at this particular reception, and it's all about celebrating the shared culture and values of Britain and Germany. There's a Beatles tribute band, for example. They have a famous association with the port of Hamburg, and obviously they're British as well. So it's that kind of that clash of cultures, if you like. There's also a traditional Hamburg sea shanty group performing for the King and Queen Consort too, in a kind of flash mob style performance. And that is the final engagement, Patrick, what you're seeing now, hopefully, on your screens of this 3-day state visit, strengthening relations between Britain and Germany. And I think on the whole it's been a success. The media coverage both in Britain and in Germany has been pretty positive, to be honest. The King was on the front pages of German newspapers this morning because he became the first British monarch in history to address the German Bundestag in Berlin, and the German people clearly seem to really appreciate him. He's very famous here. It's not just the wow factor of what Queen Elizabeth II has when she was our reigning monarch. It seems to be the institution of the British monarchy.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker, our royal reporter, joining us. And yes, as and when we do get shots of the King leaving Germany finally, we will actually bring them to you live. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. I'm just going to say, I do think if someone decided to serenade me with a traditional German sea shanty, I would probably be on the first plane back home as well. But there we go. Anyway, loads more from Germany coming your way very, very shortly. But now, a major boost for post-Brexit Britain. Some good news, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday after all, isn't it? And the UK has been accepted into an Indo-Pacific trade bloc, with the government saying it's achieved the biggest trade deal since we left the EU. Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch has said that the accession into the comprehensive and progressive agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, so it's a bit of a mouthful, is about the potential for growth tomorrow, with the bloc containing 11 other trading nations. And this does mean a lot, and quite a lot of different things as well for us. Let's have a look at some of the key facts about this deal, shall we? So, there are 11 countries in the trade bloc, including Australia, Japan and Canada. Put together, those nations' economies represent 13% of the world's total gross domestic product. And the deal gives Britain access to countries with a combined population of more than 500 million people. The members of the bloc are required to drop more than 95% of their tariffs on trade. So there we go. So, big win, really, for Great Britain, I think. I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' political reporter, Olivia Rutley. Olivia, this is great stuff, isn't it? What could it mean economically for Britain and politically, geopolitically as well?
Well, it is really good news for Britain. I mean, I'm going to start by saying what the naysayers, if you like,
yes,
what the opposition says about it, because they do have some valid points, which is that over the next 10 years, it's only expected to add 0.08% to Britain's GDP. And, of course, we already did have trade deals with 9 of the 11 countries in this bloc. The only ones that are new to us are Malaysia and Brunei, which are not huge global economies. That said, geopolitically and in terms of soft power, it is very, very important. Firstly, you've got this region which is really growing in strength and growing in numbers. So it's thought that by the end of this decade, 50% of the world's middle class will be living in these 11 different regions. So having access to that sort of market is fantastic news for Britain. It's also, of course, China's back garden, essentially. And we know that China has a huge amount of influence in the region. So to have Britain there sort of mitigating against that influence on behalf of the West shows that Britain is very serious about its position on the global stage. It also, in terms of China, helps us to become less reliant on China. Lots of British supply chains, lots of those sort of boring little bits of microchips, etc., which we use in equipment every day, is produced in China. And at the moment, we're very, very reliant on that. And, of course, that leads to big security worries like what we saw with Huawei.
Absolutely.
So this will enable us to diversify our supply chains, help us to have more manufacturing deals with these countries, make trade almost frictionless. It's also good news for Brexiteers because it makes the rejoining the EU at any point under a Labour government far less likely.
Well, talk to me a bit about that. A couple of points here. So could we have done this if we were still in the EU, and what does it mean about potential rejoining of the European Union?
We couldn't have done this while we were still in the EU because this trading bloc has different regulations to the EU. So we are only able to do it because we are now nimble and on our own. If a Labour government wanted to rejoin the EU, they would have to renegotiate this deal. And so, yes, it would be possible, but it sort of raises the bar for rejoining the EU. And it also would be politically more difficult because if we have a Labour government with a former Remainer at the helm, like Keir Starmer, he could have made the argument that, and we've heard people in his shadow cabinet making the argument, that Brexit has delivered no dividends, whereas this is a very clear Brexit benefit.
And it goes beyond just the pure financial elements of this, around £1.8 billion or something like that's GDP over the course of the next 10 years. The detractors obviously will say that's 0.08%, which is not a whopping great big number. They'll say that's far less than the amount we've lost as by virtue of not being a member of the European Union, but you think there's more to it than that?
Absolutely. So yes, in pure numerical terms, it's not particularly impressive, but in geopolitical terms, it shows that Britain, you know, Boris Johnson talks about global Britain. Well, this is a very clear sign of Britain's intent to be a serious player on the world stage. And ministers are referring to it as the Indo-Pacific tilt. Britain's going Indo-Pacific tilt, turning away from the EU and towards these Indo-Pacific countries. And in the long term, that could be a very sensible shift because the EU is declining in power year on year. We can see the EU's economy pretty much going down on a steady trajectory, whereas these 11 countries are seeing their economies
So we're sticking with the winners?
So sticking with the winners, hopefully, is a good way of putting it.
OK, all right. Now, look, people, get your emails coming in on this. It's not very often that we seem to be able to announce something that's a good, genuine, really positive thing at the start of the show. It can often be quite miserable and law and ordery, can't it? So this is actually quite a good win. Get your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. This is so good to know. The part of this deal allow these countries to trade with us and vice versa in a more free way. That's from Tony. Look, keep all of this coming. Olivia, just one quick one for you. A bit off topic this, I've got to ask you, because we're going to be talking about... This is, of all of the controversial things that we cover on this show, ladies and gentlemen, this is proving already to be the most controversial. Emails coming in thick and fast on this. Does a hash brown have any place in a full English breakfast?
Definitely, I'd say.
You go for the hash brown?
Definitely.
OK, fantastic. And the reason why I've just asked our political reporter, Olivia Utley, that is because there is an epic battle going on at the minute. The Great British Breakfast Club does now want hash browns forcefully removed from a full English. They say they're American and they've got no place in the full English breakfast. I mean, good grief, there we go. So we'll be talking about all of that very, very shortly. I've got to be honest with you, just the more food, the better for me. So I'm pro-hash brown. A lot of you are not, it's fair to say. But yes, keep those views coming in. An eclectic mix of the show today, ladies and gents. But now to a huge story. I mean, it's barely bigger than hash browns, but we'll give it a go. Involving the United States, Donald Trump has become the first former president to face criminal charges. Now, Trump was indicted by a grand jury in Manhattan last night. The case revolves around a payment of around £105,000 made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016. So she says that she had an affair with Trump. He denies all of these and says that he's completely innocent. He's expected to appear in court in New York early next week. But, as ever, there's a lot more to it when it comes to this story, not just in terms of what happens and what could happen next, but also what it could mean politically. Because some people are saying this is an absolute gift for Republicans and Trump supporters. There are also, and it's definitely worth raising this, serious concerns about what this might mean, OK, in terms of attacks or civil unrest, etc., on the streets of America. Here to talk to me about this in more detail is US political journalist and commentator. It's Laurie Laird. Laurie, thank you so much. Great to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
First and foremost, what could happen now, then? So Trump, as we understand it, is still in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. He's going to have to rock up in Manhattan at some point and have a mugshot and fingerprints taken, is he?
It looks like it. It looks like he will be there on Tuesday. And we understand his lawyers have been appearing on various news stations, U.S. news stations earlier today. They say that Donald Trump will surrender voluntarily, so we won't have any images of him in handcuffs, him being led into the prosecutor's office in New York. So it sounds like this will be, at least in process, as civil as it might be. Although whether that satisfies his supporters, that he is being treated fairly under the course of the law, that is very much an open question.
OK, all right. Now, look, he denies all of this, doesn't he? And he's saying that initially he wasn't aware of the payment, that he'd not really had anything to do with adult star Stormy Daniels. The story has changed a little bit. Where are we up to now in the Donald Trump line of defence?
Look, it's difficult to say because the indictment, he has been indicted by what's called a grand jury. It's a panel of ordinary citizens. They have been discussing all things Donald Trump for quite some time. We don't know what he has been indicted of. Lots of reporting that there are counts somewhere between 20 and 30 counts. Again, we don't know. He doesn't know. It does appear that this relates to money that was paid to an adult film star called Stormy Daniels. She claims she had an affair with Donald Trump way back in ancient history. Now, I think this is where we have to start. Paying her is not illegal. Yes. So we have to be very, very clear there. We are putting things together from what we do know. It appears the New York prosecutor has been investigating how these payments were booked. Was there any accounting fraud there? Now, if there was accounting fraud, that's called a misdemeanor. It's not it's a criminal charge, but it carries a maximum sentence of a year. It is not a particularly big deal. Where the question becomes a little bit murkier is whether, if there were accounting irregularities, whether they were used to cover up another crime or to commit another crime. Then this comes into the felony area, 4 years prosecution, 4 years criminal charges, 4 years jail. Whoops, I don't know where I am here. But I think point I have to make is that this will be devilishly hard to prove in court.
Yeah, and this is a key point because a lot of Trump supporters are saying this is actually potentially quite a good thing for Donald Trump and actually could lead to him getting back in the White House, could be a great thing for the Republican Party because they say it looks like a desperate witch hunt.
Look, and I think that is exactly what Donald Trump will say. That is exactly what his supporters will say. And again, this will be hard to prove, not least because if we are looking at whether these hush payments, one of the things we think they're looking at is whether this violated federal electoral campaign laws. In fact, that's what Michael Cohen, who was formerly Trump's lawyer, that's what he went to jail for. Here's the problem. This is a prosecution in state court. These electoral laws are federal. There's not much mixing and matching between these. So I think this is important. I am a little bit surprised that the prosecutor went forward with this because I think it will be hard to prove. But I think there's something else here that is incredibly important. We're going to hear a lot of discussion about politically motivated prosecution. And I think we have to be very, very careful here because whether or not this is politically motivated or not, the next guy who comes along, the next high-profile politician who may be investigated may not be a Republican. And we need to be very careful that we don't paint every political investigation as something that is politically motivated.
Yeah, look, exactly. Thank you very, very much, Laurie. Great to have you on the show. That's Laurie Laird there, who's a US political journalist. Now, it's worthwhile noting this as well, because Trump was backed by some of his biggest allies within a few minutes of this news breaking. We've got Matt Gaetz here, who's a Florida congressman, who has been relentless in the defence of the former president. He tweeted, "President Donald Trump always fought for us. He puts the American people above corrupt interests. For that reason alone, the powerful will never stop coming for him. A majority of Americans know Alvin Bragg's witch hunt is a politically motivated prosecution." It's that line again, isn't it? Politically motivated. "I continue to stand with President Trump as he has always stood with us." I'm going to go to Georgia now because Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, another key ally, let loose with "President Trump is innocent," and she's capped up the word innocent there, so and at least one exclamation mark, maybe two. It's hard for me to see on that screen, but basically she really means it. But not everyone is unhappy with this news. Trump's own niece, who it's fair to say, for a bit of context here, I'm sure you already know, they've got massive previous, OK? They do not get on. Mary Trump posted a long tweet which included the words, "For the victims of Donald, this is finally some measure of justice. It's been a long time coming, but after everything Donald has put this country through," again with the capital letters here, so you can tell people are really emotional about all this, "we have prevailed." That's her statement there. And it looks like Stormy Daniels is already making money from the last night's news. So this is the lady who, an adult film star, who is, of course, saying that Donald Trump essentially paid her hush money after an affair, which he denies. She tweeted, "Thank you, everyone, for your support and love. I have so many messages coming in that I can't respond. And also, don't want to spill my champagne. Team Stormy merch," this is, just tell me you're American without telling me you're American, OK? "Team Stormy merchandise/autograph orders are pouring in too. Thank you for that as well, but allow a few extra days for shipment." I mean, you could not make this up, could you? Anyway, there we go. So we'll bring you more on it as and when we get it. But yes, look, Trump supporters are saying this is an absolutely massive witch hunt that actually could do quite well for the Republican Party and Trump. Others are, well, getting the popcorn out and waiting for Trump to have his mugshot taken and his fingerprints taken and presumably appear in court one day soon. So, yes, there we go. Now, moving on closer to home. 6 climate activists are being sentenced today after they disrupted last year's British Grand Prix. Is it time for Just Stop Oil to just stop? I'm going to be talking to one of their representatives very, very shortly. I'm Patrick Christys and this is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome welcome back. Now, 6 climate activists are being sentenced this afternoon after they invaded the track during last year's British Grand Prix. The protesters from Just Stop Oil were convicted last month of causing a public nuisance. Yeah, which is, I mean, at least, isn't it? During the trial, the prosecution said their actions caused risk to the drivers and officials. Now, TV viewers will be able to see this now, so I'm going to talk you through it. We can see 5 Just Stop Oil protesters sitting on the track at Silverstone, and Formula One cars are whizzing past. They're being forced to slow down. And there's 6 of them who are guilty and are going to be sentenced. The other one was found in a car nearby with glue, cable ties and a Just Stop Oil banner. So, essentially bang to rights, some would say. They were bailed, presumably because they're not a flight risk, and they're going to be sentenced today. I'm joined now by Emma Webb, who's the UK director of the Common Sense Society, which I think these days is a rare thing. Emma, thank you very, very much. What do you expect to happen to this lot? Because they could seriously face a prison sentence, couldn't they?
Well, it's very difficult to say, because if you remember when the Colston 4 were on trial for what they did to the statue of Colston during the Black Lives Matter protest back in 2020, they were actually essentially let off of the hook. And we've seen lots of instances of criminal damage by groups like Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil and other radical progressive groups. And they don't seem to really consistently see justice. So I wouldn't necessarily want to call it. I would like to think that actually they would receive quite a harsh sentence for this, because it's quite clear that they put people's lives at risk. We've seen Just Stop Oil before blocking motorways, stopping emergency service vehicles like ambulances, fire trucks from being able to get to where they need to be, putting people's lives at risk. They clearly think that their cause is more important than human life, as well as property and heritage, as you've seen with them pouring cans of soup over artwork. So I'd like to see them get a really tough sentence, but I'm not completely confident, given the history on this, that they will actually see tough justice.
They will say, though, won't they, that they are trying to protest against arguably the most egregious example of what they are trying to prove, which is a load of rich men riding around in potentially gas-guzzling cars on a world tour of spilling fumes into the atmosphere as other petrol heads shout for more and faster. So they will presumably be saying, this is the most obvious example of the thing that we hate. I mean, have they got a case there? Lewis Hamilton seems to think so, and he drives one of the things.
I mean, Lewis Hamilton's a complete hypocrite, isn't he? They are clearly trying to imitate the suffragettes. They're clearly trying to imitate that famous incident when a suffragette ran onto a horse racing course. But they're not the suffragettes. And actually, this could have really put at risk not only the lives of themselves, but the drivers, those people who were working on the course. They said that they had done extensive research in order to ensure that this was safe, but there would be no purpose in doing this unless it actually posed a serious risk.
No. OK, so, I mean, if they go to prison, though, is there not a risk that they almost become martyrs? Possibly not quite in the same way as if one of those cars had thundered into them at 200 miles an hour, but is there not a risk that they could go down in history? Do they not kind of want to go to prison?
I think we need to balance this with, what could happen otherwise if we don't give them a tough sentence, because I think that repeatedly, not all of the same cause, like I mentioned, Black Lives Matter protesters and criminal damage. I think a lot of these progressive activists have seen that justice isn't done in these cases. They've seen that they can push their luck and get away with it. And what we are seeing as a result is escalation. And there is a real genuine potential threat of this sort of activism developing into eco-terrorism. So we need to be very careful that we draw the boundaries of the law and enforce the law very, very carefully. If we allow them to get away with it, we'll only encourage them to do further acts of criminal damage and potentially putting people's lives at risk, not only their own.
It comes just after a group of quite woke, eco-friendly lawyers decided that they were not going to prosecute any of this lot, despite the fact that none of them, as far as I could tell, would have ever been in a position to prosecute any of them, and one of them did club a fox to death with a baseball bat whilst wearing his wife's kimono one Boxing Day morning. So maybe not the most eco-friendly individual there. But that maybe has buoyed some of these activists to think, well, this is great. We've got the legal community behind us now, and we can just act with impunity. But you alluded to the idea that maybe one day they could be classed as eco-terrorists. And, I mean, essentially, that's similar-ish, but not quite the same, as to what happened with Insulate Britain, who are now, of course, in Insulate Prison, aren't they?
Well, I don't think that they are, I'm not suggesting that these people are terrorists, but I'm saying that if we allow people to break the law if there are groups who think that their ideological objectives are more important than the safety of the public. They think that the apocalypse is nigh and that they have to act now, and they will do so at all costs. That obviously poses a risk of escalation, and that's why you need to make sure that you are enforcing the law, because we've seen them doing all sorts of criminal damage, being willing to break the law in pursuit of their objectives. And if that starts to put the public in danger, of course there's a risk of escalation there. So we need to be very careful in managing that risk.
Absolutely.
So if we're talking about whether or not they want to go to prison, whether or not they would become martyrs, I think we need to think about what could really happen, on the other hand.
Good stuff. All right, Emma, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Emma Webb there, who is the UK director of the Common Sense Society, reacting to that news. We'll bring that to you as and when we get it, by the way. The sentencing of 6 Just Stop Oil members who stormed the track at Silverstone is taking place at the moment, and we will let you know the verdict as it arrives. There's loads more to come between now and 4, though, and there's big news about the former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan, who was accused of a racist comment by his former teammate, and we've also got more reaction to that. Huge news. Huge is the biggest news you've ever heard in your life. That Donald Trump is due in court next week over an alleged illegal payment to an adult film star. But first, it's your headlines with Rihanna.
Patrick, thank you. It's 3:34. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Britain has joined an 11-nation trans-Pacific bloc in its biggest trade deal since leaving the EU.
We've just agreed one of the biggest trade deals of all time.
After nearly 2 years of negotiations, the UK is now part of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal will cut UK tariffs on cheese, cars, chocolate, gin and whiskey. It's expected to boost the economy by £1.8 billion over 10 years. It's also built new post-Brexit trade links with Brunei and Malaysia. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says the deal provides a good opportunity for growth. Oscar Pistorius will not be released early from his jail sentence for killing Reeva Steenkamp. The former Paralympian has been denied parole. The 36-year-old is halfway through his 13-year sentence for shooting his girlfriend at his home in South Africa on Valentine's Day in 2013. Ahead of the hearing, Reeva's family said they didn't think Pistorius should be released as he'd shown no remorse. A man and a woman arrested following a double murder in Cambridgeshire have been released with no further action. A third man remains in custody. The 2 victims, named locally as 57-year-old Gary Dunmore and his 32-year-old son Josh, died on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether the shootings at separate properties in Sutton and Bluntisham were linked to a custody battle. 2 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the death of an elderly woman in Suffolk. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield at 2 p.m. on Saturday after reports 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor following a robbery. 2 boys, aged 15 and 14, both from the Lowestoft area, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. And an explosion in space the size of our entire solar system has left scientists baffled. It happened 180 million light years away, and astronomers say it was much flatter than they thought possible. Instead of spherical, it was disc-shaped. Scientists say it changes everything they thought they knew about space explosions. Remarkable images there. TV, online, DAB plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
OK, welcome back. So, aristocrat Constance Martin and her partner Mark Gordon appeared in court today over the death of their baby daughter. The couple are charged with the manslaughter of Victoria, who was found dead in Brighton earlier this month after a 2-day search. GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White has been at the Old Bailey for us.
After Constance Martin and Mark Gordon had been detained, arrested on the night of the 27th of February in the north of Brighton, this was a culmination of many weeks in which this couple had been, for whatever reason, on the run. It was the 5th of January when their car was found abandoned and on fire in a lay-by on the M61 near Bolton. In the days that followed, they were seen at various points on CCTV in Liverpool, down in Essex, in East London, and eventually down in East Sussex as well, with multiple appeals by the police to try to trace the couple, with concerns over the welfare of Constance Martin in particular, and that young child. But of course it ended with the detention of this couple, an arrest in Brighton, and then 2 days later the terrible discovery of an infant's body on a local allotment in a greenhouse. It was wrapped in plastic, according to the Magistrates' Court initial hearing, under a pile of nappies. There have been post-mortem examinations that have taken place since then that so far have been unable to determine the cause of death. But this couple are facing charges of gross negligence, manslaughter, of concealing the birth of a child, and of perverting the course of justice. This was their first Crown Court appearance here at the Old Bailey today. We're told that they will be back here for a plea hearing in June, and then the actual trial itself, Mark, is scheduled for the 2nd of January next year.
Yes, Mark White there, our home security editor outside the Old Bailey. Right, OK, well, look, very shortly, I've got a big guest on a massive, massive news story. Donald Trump has been indicted and will appear in court next week. But is he the victim of a witch hunt? I'm going to be talking to a guy who knows him arguably as well as anybody else. Deputy Assistant to the President, former Deputy Assistant to the President and strategist in the Trump White House. It is, of course, the wonderful Sebastian Gorka, and he's going to join me live in just a matter of moments. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. Let's return to one of our top stories now. Donald Trump becoming the first former president to face criminal charges. He has been indicted by a grand jury over a payment of around £105,000 made to an adult film star, Stormy Daniels, in 2016. Let's talk now to former White House Special Advisor to Donald Trump and host of America First as well. It's Sebastian Gorka. Sebastian, look, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. Is this a witch hunt?
Well, we just have to put it into context, Patrick, of the last 7 years. What have we seen? It's sheer insanity. If somebody says this is the most persecuted man in American history, here's the rundown. Here's to use the judicial phrase, the fact pattern. First, we have what? We have the first time in U.S. history something called Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Never before did 3 intelligence agencies, the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI, have a covert operation to spy on a presidential campaign. They tried to prove the Russian collusion nexus. They failed. Then when he became president, what happened? They had the former director of the FBI, a swamp creature called Robert Mueller, given $40 million, dozens of FBI agents, 20 months to investigate so-called Russia collusion. Again, utter failure. After that, they tried to impeach him. They failed. And here's the example of the utter derangement of the left in our country. They tried to impeach him again, Patrick, after he'd left office. Impeachment is used to remove somebody from office. He'd already got, and Speaker Pelosi had a second witch hunt. Then we had the FBI armed raid on his home in Mar-a-Lago. So yes, I would say this is just another utter Star Chamber witch hunt.
And we don't know exactly everything that he's going to be charged with yet, do we? And so I suppose people will be saying, let's wait and see what that is first. We believe maybe on Tuesday, and then maybe more will come to light.
Well, look, there have been leaks, of course. The left likes to always leak. There were leaks to this fake news outlet, CNN, that has less than 500,000 viewers in a nation of 320 million Americans. What have they said? That it is falsification of business records, which is interesting because that is a misdemeanor charge that has a 2-year statute of limitations. This occurred 7 years ago. So now they have this outre legal theory that's never been tried before to tie a misdemeanor from 7 years ago to election fraud, meaning the payment of this NDA amount. It's not a hush money payment. It's a non-disclosure agreement. I had a non-disclosure agreement when I was an advisor to the Trump organization, giving him national security advice on the campaign trail. Now they're trying to say, well, he accrued some kind of election benefit from paying this NDA to Stormy Daniels. Therefore, that's some kind of skirting of federal election funding rules. Is the most outlandish thing you have ever heard. Even if you didn't vote for President Trump, you're going to say, that's bollocks, that's bogus.
OK, all right. I mean, look, Trump has gone on to Truth Social, who says they've brought about this fake, corrupt, disgraceful charge against me because I stand with the American people. So he's coming out swinging. We would expect nothing less from this. What do we know about Alvin Bragg, who is the district attorney investigating Donald Trump? What's going on there?
So in the US, we have a rather peculiar system where local prosecutors are actually elected officials. They have a political campaign, then they're elected, and then they become this bureaucrat of the court. Alvin Bragg ran on a ticket of putting Donald Trump in prison, right? This is how unbiased this individual is. And not only that, he was funded to the tune of more than $1 million in that campaign by a Soros Foundation. So this is one of George Soros's more than 36 pit bulls, these pro-criminal left-wing prosecutors that have been funded by George Soros. So this is a guy who's been on a witch hunt, and he admitted this when he was campaigning for the position, and now he's following through on that promise of taking down the man who got, let me remind everyone, in the last election, 74 million votes, more votes than any incumbent president in the history of America.
Sebastian, thank you very much for your time. Always an absolute pleasure. Great to have you on the show. Sebastian Gorka there, who is the former White House advisor to Donald Trump and the host of America First. Just if anyone did hear a little smidgen of strong language there, then apologies. OK, right, so now to a huge sports story. And former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan has been found not guilty of racism by a cricket disciplinary panel. Vaughan was accused of making a racist comment about players of Asian heritage ahead of a game for his county Yorkshire back in 2009. And, you know, the BBC, who was working for at the time, responded very, very strongly. There was a lot of stuff going around online about this guy. And then now, it's not guilty, isn't it? So to discuss this story, I am joined by sports broadcaster and writer Aidan McGee. Aidan, thank you very much. So, Michael Vaughan, vindicated.
Well, yeah, on the balance of probabilities, which means that he's more than 50% likely not to have made these comments. The problem, Patrick, is that they were so long ago. It was before a test at Trent Bridge in 2009 where he's alleged to have made these comments to Azim Rafiq, Adil Rashid and 2 other Asian players. There were discrepancies in the evidence. I think it's fair to say that Vaughan's lawyer had a field day marrying up or trying to marry up the various testimonies from the 4 players. He also criticised the ECB investigation. But Azim Rafiq's wider accusation that cricket was institutionally racist was stood up.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And this was... Michael Vaughan was kind of caught in the collateral of all of this. And the BBC reacted quite strongly, didn't they? They
did at the time, yeah. They've also released a statement today. I'm not going to read it out word for word, but they did say they've been in contact with Michael Vaughan. I mean, the big question here, Patrick, is he going to get his job on Test Match Special back, as he stood back from that last June. But they say they've been in contact with Michael Vaughan since he stepped back from broadcasting, but they won't be making any comment further today. They won't be making any further comment at this time. Now, that kicks the can down the road, I suppose, but it is something that needs consideration. They're not saying that he won't be able to step back into the chair. A lot of people will say, well, hang on a minute, he's been vindicated, his lawyer has exonerated him effectively against the charges, and so, you know, should he step back in? For the BBC, though, I think you should say, well, OK, it's only on the balance of probabilities. It's not a clear...
I think a lot of people will take massive exception to that, though, really, because it does appear that it's quite easy in this day and age for someone to lob a massive accusation out there about you, and the R word is a huge accusation.
It is.
And then you lose everything. You can lose your job, you can lose the respect of your peers, you never work again, you probably get biffed from the after-dinner speaking circuit and all of this stuff. And then you found not guilty on the balance of probabilities, and people go, well, we can't be 100% sure you didn't say it, so we're still not going to give you your job back.
No, that's true. I mean, it was a point made by Michael Vaughan's lawyer. The hearing took place between March the 1st and March the 9th here, so it was a nine-day sitting. He said that it has implications for his life, his livelihood and what he does going forward. He's only 48 years old. It's not as if he was ready to put out to graze. I mean, this is a stellar name as well. This is somebody who led England to their first Ashes triumph since 1987. Back in 2005, he captained 51 tests between 2003 and 2008. So it does have huge implications for him going forward. We'll see how the media react. We'll see how they... the BBC doesn't have advertisers as such, but it's in their gift to be able to reinstall him. But they might look at the heat they might get from not sponsors or advertisers, because that doesn't apply in this case, but certainly from fans, from listeners. I think most people would say that he'd be allowed to step back into the bridge. Yeah, indeed. And look, we'll obviously keep you up to date on that as and when there are any developments, but it is a big day for Michael Vaughan, and it is part of, as you rightly said there, a much wider case. And I think it's fascinating that there hasn't been... It's very easy, it always catches my eye, this. It's very easy for allegations to be put out there about people. It's very easy for people's names to be dragged through the mud. And then all too often, and I'm saying this with my eyes wide open because I obviously work in the news industry, right? But all too often, it's not maybe given the same prominence when somebody is cleared, essentially. Yeah, exactly. Look, we should say as well, Azim Rafiq, well, you know, there were suggestions that he's just made this vindictive and it's about Michael Vaughan. But he did say at the very, very beginning, this can't just be about Michael Vaughan. Of course, there are 5 other players involved as well. And the accusation about cricket more widely, about it being institutionally racist, still stands, as I said. Can I ask you something completely off topic, Aidan? Is that all right? I feel like we know each other well enough, don't we, by now? What's this going to be about? Yeah, so there is a big debate raging at the minute. We're going to be talking about this a little bit later on in the show, but I want to ask you, OK? So the Great British Breakfast Society want to ban hash browns from full English. What's your view on this? I love a hash brown, but the problem is that I'm diabetic, and so carbohydrates for me, they're kind of off the table. I had a breakfast this morning. It was bacon, sausage, egg, tomato, baked beans. They're my 5. I can't really have anything else. I can't really have fried bread. Some would call that a full English, Aidan. Not without a hash brown. Well, there you go. What about fried bread? What about toast? Well, this is it. I'm getting a lot of fried bread. Fried bread every time, says Chris. Yes, absolutely. And this is it. Some people are saying hash browns are an American invention, followed by some remarkably rude things about the Americans. That's from Sandra. Sandra, grief. But I think the hash browns have probably entered the diet from McDonald's, I would have thought, and then maybe Burger King, American food outlets. Yeah, another one here. Mel, hash browns are American. They're very fattening and greasy. I'll stick to British bacon, eggs, mushrooms, grilled tomato, toast and tea. And that is the Aidan McGee Breakfast of Champions, is it? My dad was very, very into soda bread. He came from Ireland, so... well, there you go. That as well. So it depends. You can you know, the Ulster fry as well. You can adapt it as you wish. Yeah, fantastic. Well, good. I'm glad we managed to cover all bases 470 calories, I think, in my breakfast.
Really?
Yeah,
Not that anyone's
472.
Not that anyone's counting, of course.
No, well, I'm counting, actually. I'll have to.
Oh, you don't get a body like that, Aidan, without counting your calories. Look, thank you very much,
Cheers,
Aidan
Patrick.
McGee there, who is, of course, sports broadcaster, writer and connoisseur of fantastic breakfast options. Yes, look, I'm going to delve into the inbox now because loads of you have been getting in touch. We've covered a huge range of stories today, haven't we? We've got this bumper trade deal that Britain has signed. We've also had Trump and the impending arrest for Donald Trump there. That's caused massive controversy. Just Stop Oil, we're awaiting a sentencing for them. And the King in Germany, we're hoping that maybe in a few minutes' time we might be able to bring you some live shots of King Charles leaving Germany, a historic visit there, the first king to speak at the Bundestag. He spoke in both German and English. And the red carpet treatment that the Germans have rolled out for him is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? And it is good to see that actually, despite the fact that, of course, our Queen is sadly no longer with us, the royal family, the institution of the monarchy very much lives on, and certainly the reputation of it, and with it this country, is still very much prominent abroad as well. Look, loads of you have been getting in touch about Just Stop Oil. Again, I want to inform you that we're going to be hopefully bringing you the verdict there in their sentencing. 6 of them are being sentenced for storming the track at Silverstone. Well, 5 of them stormed the track and one waited in a car nearby, but was found with a Just Stop Oil banner in his car, so bang to rights, some would say. John says, I, for one, don't give a proverbial if Just Stop Oil protesters become martyrs. I hope they get a really long stint in the clink, at least a year, but I'm not over-hopeful, and not in a cushy open prison, please. So that's from John. Of course, strong views from John there. It's fair to say that that view is largely shared in the inbox. I'm hoping later on to be speaking to a Just Stop Oil representative and a spokesperson so I can put some of your views to them. Private jet travel rose 64% last year. How's that for climate hypocrisy? That's from Richard. Now, Richard, I suspect as well, I did see a story in The Guardian today about Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, taking loads of private jets in the last few weeks alone and contributing, some would say there, to a not really upholding the net zero agenda, is it? And I just wonder as well, given the fact that we spoke yesterday a lot on this show about the amount of money that it's going to cost ordinary people to retrofit heat pumps in their homes or get rid of gas, buy an electric car, comply with ULEZ charges and all of this stuff. Does it feel as though when you see leaders, Sadiq Khan does it, I think he rolls around in gas-guzzling cars a lot of the time, he certainly used to. Political leaders taking private jets everywhere. We have even had climate activists taking private jets everywhere, don't we? That quite famous actress who flew business class from America back over here to get involved in an Extinction Rebellion protest. Do you not think that that maybe means that it's almost like one rule for one and one rule for another? Does anyone else wonder, with this Just Stop Oil lot, when they get a criminal record, do they not think it's going to find it quite hard for them to get a job going forward? I appreciate that some of them are just old, crusty, doddery individuals, and maybe that doesn't really matter. But for the younger people, I can't help but wonder whether or not they're going to come to regret their choices when it comes to being able to get a job once they've been locked up. But yes, we'll bring you the future of their cause very, very shortly, as and when we get it. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. The wind in the south will ease during the rest of the day and it'll be drier for many overnight, but still some cloud and rain to talk about on this final day of March. In fact, for some southern parts of England, it's likely to be the dullest March on record. Low pressure after low pressure has pushed across southern areas through this month, and the final day is no different. It peels away into the North Sea, leaving behind a legacy of cloudy skies and outbreaks of rain. The rain overnight consolidates into a band from western parts of Northern Ireland into South Wales and central southern England, with further dribs and drabs of rain and drizzle into the east. But in between, some drier spells, a lot of cloud, any clear spells confined to the northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a grey and damp start to the weekend. A lot of low cloud, especially in the east, covering some of the hills of northeast England and eastern Scotland. Still, some of that rain to come for western parts of Northern Ireland into South Wales, turning more showery as it pushes into southwest England by the afternoon. And by the afternoon, some brightness emerges in the west and far south, 14 Celsius possible where that happens, but staying dull and with a chilly feel on that North Sea coast, 6 or 7 Celsius in places at best. Then, through Saturday night, a change to drier and clearer conditions towards the east, with the cloud being pushed further west for a time, and mostly things are drying out at this stage. It's a frost-free night for many, but into the east of Scotland, northeast England, a chilly start with a touch of frost here first thing Sunday. However, Sunday does look drier and brighter, particularly in the east. Some sunshine breaking through the cloudier conditions this time further west. But for the vast majority, it does dry up. And Monday is looking like a widely dry and bright day. A bit more cloud coming into the west on Tuesday.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a very good afternoon, everybody. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News. It's just gone 4 o'clock, and here's what I've got for you this hour. Yes, OK, so a bumper post-Brexit trade deal. People are doing their best to talk it down, but you won't get any of that nonsense here. I'll be telling you exactly what's going on with that very, very shortly, but we're whizzing over stateside as well, because it's a massive day in American and indeed global politics, because Donald Trump is, of course, facing charges in relation to an alleged payment made to a porn star. We'll tell you what this could really mean. His supporters are saying this is a complete stitch-up and a complete witch hunt. We'll give you more detail on all of that. And yes, hopefully any moment now we're going to get the verdict through and the sentencing through, I should say, for 6 Just Stop Oil protesters who stormed the British Grand Prix. What will it mean for them? Will they go to prison? And of all the controversial topics that I cover here on this show, I mean, by far and away, this is it, isn't it? Hash browns, do they have any place in a full English? Apparently, they should be banned because they're an American edition. I want to know from you, do you like hash browns? Do you think they should be in your full English? Don't say we don't treat you here at GB News, people. All right, get your views coming in. GB Views and gbnews.uk. It's got to be the hash brown one, hasn't it? Do you have hash browns in your full English? But also I'm going to ask as well, what do you make of this post-Brexit trade deal? Do you think Britain is back, baby? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Right now, here's your headlines.
And good afternoon. It's 4:04. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Britain has joined an 11-nation trans-Pacific bloc, its biggest trade deal since leaving the EU, after nearly 2 years of negotiations.
We've just agreed one of the biggest trade deals of all time.
Well, nearly 2 years of negotiations, and this is the result. The UK is now part of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal will cut UK tariffs on cheese, chocolate, gin, cars, whiskey, and it's expected to boost the economy by £1.8 billion over 10 years. It will also build new post-Brexit trade links with Brunei and Malaysia. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says it provides a good opportunity for growth.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc
is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle-class consumers will be in this block of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
However, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the deal will not help our economy.
Welcome, of course, but recognise the proportion that it actually impacts on our economy. What we need alongside that is a closer trading relationship with the EU. Businesses across the country are crying out for a better deal than the one that the government has put in front of them.
Oscar Pistorius will not be released early from his jail sentence for killing Riva Steenkamp. The former Paralympian's being denied parole. The 36-year-old is halfway through his 13-year sentence for shooting his girlfriend at their home in South Africa on Valentine's Day in 2013. Well, ahead of the hearing, Riva's family said they didn't think Pistorius should be released as he showed no remorse, nor did they feel he'd been rehabilitated. Donald Trump's become the first US president to face criminal charges after he was indicted by a grand jury in New York. This was last night as supporters gathering in front of his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. New York prosecutors have been investigating the alleged payment of hush money to an adult film star prior to his election in 2016. The payment was legal, but Trump allegedly recorded it as a business expense, which is illegal in New York. Mr. Trump says he's innocent. The Manhattan investigation, though, just one of several legal challenges he is facing. A man and a woman arrested following a double murder in Cambridgeshire have been released with no further action. The two victims, named locally as 57-year-old Gary Dunmore and his 32-year-old son Josh, died on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether the shootings at separate properties in Sutton and Blunthamshire were linked to a custody battle. The third man remains in custody. Two teenagers have been arrested in connection with the death of an elderly woman in Suffolk. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield on Saturday afternoon after reports the 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor following a robbery. Two boys aged 15 and 14 from the Lowestoft area have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon are due to stand trial in January next year over the death of their baby. They've been charged with gross negligence manslaughter. The couple appeared in court earlier. They didn't enter pleas and have been remanded in custody. They've also been charged with concealing the birth of a child and of perverting the course of justice. Now, holidaymakers could see their Easter plans scuppered after last-ditch talks to halt security guard strikes at Heathrow Airport failed. More than 1,400 Unite members have walked out from Terminal 5 for 10 days. The airport says it's drafting in 1,000 extra staff to help passengers. And this is GB News. More as it happens. Now, back to Patrick.
OK, let's get cracking. So we start with some great news for Great Britain. A major boost to post-Brexit Britain. The UK has been accepted into an Indo-Pacific trade bloc, and the government says it's the biggest trade deal since leaving the EU. Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch has said that the accession to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a mouthful and a half, is about the potential for growth tomorrow, with the bloc containing 11 other trading nations. Let's just take a look now at some of the key facts about this deal. So there are 11 countries in the trade bloc. These include nations like Australia, Japan and Canada. Put together, those nations' economies represent 13% of the world's total gross domestic product. And the deal gives Britain access to countries with a combined population of more than 500 million people. The members of the bloc are required to drop more than 95% of their tariffs on trade. So that's some facts there for you. I'm joined now in the studio by GBNews' political reporter, Olivia Rutley. Olivia, I was quite surprised, I must say, although I shouldn't be, at the amount of detraction to this. Oh, it's just a puny little trade deal and it's only going to be 0.08% of our GDP, etc. Is there any merit to the negativity at all? Because I'm feeling quite good about this.
Well, in purely numerical terms, it doesn't look that impressive. As you say, we'll add 0.08% to GDP over the next 10 years. And, of course, we already had trade agreements with 9 of the 11 countries in the partnership. And there is an argument, of course, that Brexit has meant that trade with the EU has lessened. We're not trading so well with EU countries. But all of that said, I agree with you that I think it is generally very good news for Britain. It's a big statement of Britain's intent on the global stage. And, of course, Boris Johnson talked about global Britain, but there was very little flesh on the bones, if you like. Well, this puts flesh on the bones. This partnership of 11 countries is a growing area of importance in the world. It's thought that by the end of the decade, 50% of the world's middle class will be in these 11 countries. Once the UK joins this partnership, it'll be responsible for 15% of global GDP, which is higher than the EU's global GDP EU's GDP from last year. So the thought is that even if in the very short term it might not be headline-grabbingly, fantastically financially great, in the long term, there are some huge benefits.
People always dig Britain out, don't they, for a lack of forward planning and sticking plaster politics, and then they unveil something that would put us in the same bracket as Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore and Vietnam, which is supposed to be massive planning for the future and our future economy, and people just say, it's not going to bring us much in the short term.
Well, absolutely. And the other very interesting element of it is that the US wanted to join the forerunner to this, which was the Trans-Pacific Alliance, under Barack Obama, and pulled out of it under Donald Trump. And now the Democrats are worried about that. The Democrats are interested in this alliance, but are worried about going near it because they think it's a sort of poison chalice because of the noises Trump made about it. But it's thought that it's quite likely that at some point in the future, America might well join this partnership. And that would be a very interesting, backdoor way of us getting a trading agreement with the US, which, as we know, has been very difficult to come by. So it seems to be sensible forward planning for
Now,
the
is this
UK.
purely an economic and trading bloc? Does it come with any of the kind of political and societal guff that we had in the EU?
Well, technically, no, it doesn't. It doesn't have its own courts, it doesn't have its own parliament, it isn't interested in harmonising, in ever closer political unity. There's no talk about a bloc army or anything as we've had with the EU. That said, I mean, trade is always quite political, and, for example, China wanted to join it. At some point, China was blocked from joining it. It's not thought that China is on the cusp of joining in any way. Would Japan be interested in being in a sort of partnership which China would be bound to dominate? But if China were to join, how would that look? We have this government has promised to distance itself from China. It's recognised China as not quite a threat, but something very near a threat, and there could be difficult political problems, but it isn't the same sort of organisation as the EU at all. It is purely economic, and it's at pains to stress that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Olivia, thank you very much. As ever, Olivia Rutley, there, our political reporter. How do you feel about this, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? I'm just having a look now on some of the variety of different headlines that we've got about this, OK? So we've got CPTPP, which is the snappy acronym for this. UK accepted into Indo-Pacific trade bloc, its biggest trade deal since Brexit. Britain is re-emerging as an economic powerhouse. Britain joining the CPTPP is a triumph for the Tories. BBC News. UK-Asia trade deal to boost UK economy by 0.08%. I mean, come on, guys, allow yourself to be happy, eh? Just allow yourselves to be happy. I'm joined now by Conservative MP James Duddridge. James, great to have you on the show. Are you happy?
I'm ecstatic. This is a product of 5 years of work. Liam Fox started it off. We couldn't have done it without Brexit. It moves us away from the slow growth, interventionist muddle that is the EU. It's a key deliverable post-Brexit. And the doommongers that say, on day one, it's not going to make any money. It's not about day one. It's about the longer term. 15% of the global trade goes through these 11 countries. The Indo-Pacific is growing faster, as your clip before alluded to. Now, half the middle classes. That is the future, the global future for the United Kingdom, the outward-looking future for the United Kingdom.
Just talk to me about this, James, though. Just talk to me about this, James, because, look, to be honest with you, it's a great thing in terms of, yeah, OK, we've sat around the table and we've signed something with a load of nations and it looks as though it's going to be a good thing for the future. But, you know, the fact is that it is only going to boost our economy by 0.08% in the short term, and people can look at you and say, well, this is nothing like what we had when we were in the EU, is it? It's still a net loss for Britain, some would say.
No, I mean, this is a big deal going forward. It's for a growth area. You know, we always go beyond what is expected anyway. It's a stepping stone. I mean, previously, our trade deals have either been rollover, similar to the EU deals, or in the case of Australia and New Zealand, slightly bolder. That was a bill that I took through parts of its stages in the Commons. And that, again, was a stepping stone to this agreement, which could go further with other countries going in. Taiwan has expressed an interest. You talked about the problems of China. And originally, this rather incomprehensible acronym used to be TPP without the Americans. And when they decided not to come in, the Comprehensive Partnership Agreement was added with them coming out. But that would be a big game changer if they did go in under a different administration. And I would ask the Democrats and the Republicans to be bold. Free trade is in the global self-interest.
It's interesting because for quite a long period of time, people have been very keen to highlight the negative sides of Britain and comment about maybe how other nations view us on the world stage. But clearly, Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore and Vietnam think that we are a fabulous addition to this little club.
Well, it's a big club. When I went out to the G20, the trade ministers' meetings last year, everyone was very keen to get us on board for different reasons. Different nations have different priorities, but there was a feeling that closer working, closer trade was good, but, falling short of the political union, the distraction that has been the European Union. If the European Union had stuck to a free trading bloc, principally, that would have been a bloc that I would have been happy to participate in, as long as we didn't lock others out the deal. But they don't even seem to be getting that right.
Can you localise this, please, for people like me, maybe, who are thinking, well, this sounds great, and we're all here saying, well, post-Brexit trade deal, mega stuff. What am I going to see from this? What kind of products are we going to be trading? What kind of, how is it going to affect my life? How is it going to affect our viewers and our listeners' lives? Why should they be happy about it?
Well, I'm sat here in Southend, and the constituency I represent, we make Boeing seats. We make aircraft seats for private jets around the world. We will be able to export those into marketplaces, and 99% of the goods, zero tariff. So, yeah, less friction over trade and less bureaucracy as well. So it will mean there'll be more jobs in Southend, and I could go to any constituency and point to benefits of free trade through this partnership agreement. Again,
I can hear people clamouring now saying, well, we already had trade agreements with 9 of these 11 countries, so what's the benefit for them?
Well, this is a better trade agreement, more goods included. It's inclusive across the board, so you're not looking at a different set of situations for Australia and New Zealand on new trade going through. There's a single set of rules, effectively, to follow, making trade lower friction, less bureaucracy. This is what we always talk about doing as politicians. We're actually getting to deliver it now. And this is just a starting point. The Department for International Trade under Kemi Banandock, absolutely superb Secretary of State, is pushing through more and more deep trade deals that will have a major impact on the UK economy going forward. It's not going to revolutionise the world this month, but it will, going down year after year, and put Great Britain at the heart of a global economy rather than a narrow EU-focused economy.
James, thank you very much. As ever, James Duddridge there, who is Conservative MP for Rochford and Southend East, as he was just talking about there. So good news, it would appear anyway, for everyone. frankly. Anyway, now to a huge story coming out of the United States. Donald Trump has said that he's completely innocent after he became the first former president to face criminal charges. Trump was indicted by a grand jury in Manhattan last night, and the case revolves around a payment of around £105,000 made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016. Daniels says that she had an affair with Trump. That'd be a story, wouldn't it? That she had an affair with Trump. He's expected to appear in court in New York early next week. He denies everything. Of course he does. Joining me now is US political analyst, it's Eric Ham. Eric, great to have you on the show. So Donald Trump supporters are saying that this is a complete witch hunt and it will actually quite possibly pave the way for him re-entering the White House. Is there any truth to that?
No, it will certainly pave the way for him to possibly be the Republican nominee. But as far as actually winning the White House, no, it will not. Look, since Donald Trump walked down those gilded stairs back in 2016 and after winning the White House, he lost in 2020. His party lost also the House and the Senate in 2020. They failed to pick up the House or the Senate. I'm sorry, they picked up the House in 2022, but the red wave that many thought was coming, it certainly did not happen. Donald Trump, since being the titular head of the party, has actually seen the party lose gains since then. And so what we're seeing now, even though many people won't say it publicly, is that it is time to move on from Donald Trump, which is why you see so many people clamoring and hoping that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis actually gets in this race.
Yeah, indeed. Look, I don't want to go too down the old massive tinfoil hat conspiracy theories or anything, but some people are saying that this actually might be quite good because if it does mean that Donald Trump gets the Republican nomination and he goes ahead, he's probably got less chance of winning than Ron DeSantis. So depending on which way you dress this up, it might actually be a good thing for the Democrats.
Oh, absolutely. It is. In fact, right now, Donald Trump, even with this indictment and the specter of more to come, is clearly now the front runner of the Republican field and head and shoulders above all of them. He's already raising a lot of money as a result of this. And Donald Trump, unlike any other potential Republican nominee, knows how to maximize his press outreach and engagement. And he's using this indictment to maximum effect. And he is using it to portray himself as the victim. And it's working. His numbers are rising. Ron DeSantis, his closest competitor, his numbers are falling.
Look, I've got to ask this. In fact, I don't have to. I want to ask this. Donald Trump they've been throwing a lot of stuff at him for a very long period of time. There was all the Russia allegations and all of that. And he's emerged from all of those things. And then it does look a little bit from the outside now like they're desperate to get him on what may end up. We'll have to wait and see exactly what these charges are levelled at him on Tuesday, it's believed to be. But it may be somewhat of a technicality because the actual payment itself was not deemed to be illegal. It's maybe the way that they dress that up in terms of his business funding and all of that stuff. He denies any wrongdoing. And then you've got Joe Biden in the White House at the moment, who... There are a lot of question marks over Joe Biden's past, aren't there, really, and his potential involvements in a variety of different things, and certainly his son, etc. I mean, is it just pot kettle black when it comes to big figures in US politics at the moment?
Well, I don't know who the pot is, and I don't know who the kettle is in your story. And as far as the allegations about Joe Biden, I don't know what allegations you're referring to, what that means. But what we know about Donald Trump is that these allegations and these investigations against him are very much real. And I think some of them have the potential to stick. But even if they don't, the specter of an indictment, the specter of potentially going to prison is enough to actually sway those all-important independent voters to move away from the Republican Party and move towards the Democrats.
Is it politically motivated, though? Alvin Bragg, who is the Manhattan District Attorney investigating Donald Trump. I had a guest on earlier, Sebastian Gorka, who's got some skin in the game because he's a close ally of Donald Trump and has worked with him, etc. So it's important to make that clear. But he is saying that Alvin Bragg has a history of being very closely aligned with the Democrats and potentially even having received some funding from them, etc. So, I mean, is this a bit politically motivated?
Well, you know, that's the argument that many on the right are making right now, that this is politically motivated. And I don't know how it's politically motivated, and I don't know what role that an Alvin Bragg would play. And here's another way to look at this. If this is politically motivated, if in fact the Fulton County DA brings charges, is that politically motivated? If the special counsel, Jack Smith, brings charges, is that politically motivated? And so how is it that all of these people are seeing charges against Donald Trump? Right now, there are 23 cases, both criminal and civil, against Donald Trump. Are they all politically motivated? And quite frankly, why would they be politically motivated when we see Donald Trump simply cannot win?
Well, OK, all right. I mean, look, obviously Donald Trump would dispute that, and I think people could see the logical argument as to why it might be politically motivated, but I do understand what you're saying. Are you concerned at all that there could be civil unrest? His last question, this. Are you concerned that there could be some civil unrest as a result of this? Because Trump has got a fanatical base.
He certainly does. But we also know that the New York Police Department is more than 40,000 strong. They certainly know how to deal with rioting and violence in the street. And they are, unlike January 6th, they are prepared for this moment. And also, too, no one knows how to do crowd control and policing better in terms of how the NYPD does it than either the Secret Service or the FBI. And we know the Secret Service is going to be taking the lead, considering that it's a former president that's involved in a potential arraignment and indictment.
OK, well, we'll have to keep our eyes and ears peeled for the latest developments on this. Eric, great to chat. Thank you very much, US political analyst there, Eric Ham, dialing in from stateside. Right, so Trump was backed by some of his biggest allies within just a few minutes of the news breaking. Matt Gaetz, a Florida congressman, who has been relentless in the defence of the former president, tweeted this. He said, President Donald Trump always fought for us. He puts the American people above corrupt interests. For that reason alone, the powerful will never stop coming for him. A majority of Americans know Alvin Bragg's, that's the prosecutor I was alluding to before, witch hunt is a politically motivated prosecution. I continue to stand with President Trump as he always stood with us. And it's over to Georgia now, where Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, another key ally, let loose. She says, President Trump is innocent. All in capital letters there. Really means it. But not everyone is unhappy with the news, because Trump's own niece, who, again, it's important to say there is, well, to say there's history there is, to put it mildly, they do not get on. Mary Trump posted a long tweet which includes the words, for the victims of Donald, this is finally some measure of justice. It's been a long time coming, but after everything Donald has put this country through, we have prevailed. And it looks as though Stormy Daniels is already making money from this. So this is the what's the politically correct term? Adult actress? Adult film star. Thank you very much, my producer, who appeared to be very quick on that one there. I wonder why. Stormy Daniels is already making money from last night's news, apparently. She tweeted, thank you to everyone for your support and love. I have so many messages coming in that I can't respond, and this is good. She says she doesn't want to spill her champagne. Team Stormy merchandise/autograph orders are pouring in too. Thank you for that as well, but allow a few extra days for shipment. So apparently there is now merch that you can get. I mean, America, ladies and gentlemen, there we go. Moving on. The King and Queen consorts are about to leave Germany, and the trip has gone very, very well. So is this the start of a stronger relationship between the two countries? Hopefully we're going to have some live shots of them leaving Germany for you, and we'll go to Cameron Walker, our Royal Reporter, for the latest on what has been an absolutely stellar trip for King Charles. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, the King and Queen Consort are about to leave Germany after the monarch's first state visit. The trip has been widely seen as a massive success, although it's fair to say the build-up didn't go too smoothly. So the King had been due to travel to France last Sunday, but the violent protests across the country led to that trip being postponed, considering as well that there were fires in Paris and Bordeaux. The state visit to Germany, though, went ahead as planned, and the King and Queen Consort arrived in Berlin on Wednesday. The royal party were then driven to the Brandenburg Gate in the centre of Berlin, where they were greeted by the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. And the King got his hands dirty as well when he planted a tree in memory of Queen Elizabeth II, which is a lovely touch, isn't it? There we go. And on Wednesday evening, the royal couple attended a state banquet in Berlin, and there was a bit of red carpet treatment there, all dressed up to the nines. It was lovely stuff. And the next day, King Charles made history when he became the first British monarch to address the German Parliament.
The United Kingdom and Germany are together providing leadership to secure our shared future. Today, the United Kingdom and Germany are Europe's 2 largest producers of power from offshore wind. These innovations are vital in combating the existential challenge of climate change and global warming, which confronts us all.
Well, there we go. The state visit continued today in Hamburg, where the King and Queen Consort signed the Golden Book in the Emperor's Hall. And the royal couple rounded off their trip by attending a celebratory reception. A local band played a traditional Hamburg sea shanty, which you'll be pleased to hear we will not be playing for you. So there you go. Let's go now to Hamburg, where we're going to join our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who's got the latest as we wait for King Charles and Queen Camilla to finally depart. Cameron, what's going on?
Absolutely, Patrick. I mean, it's been a very full-on 3-day state visit to Germany. Of course, it's the first state visit of the new reign, the first foreign trip abroad for the king as monarch. And I think, on the whole, looking back at the whole trip, it's been a pretty big success, to be honest. Both the British and German press have heavily praised the trip. The king's been on the front pages of a number of German newspapers, both yesterday and today, following his speech in the Bundestag in Berlin yesterday. The German Parliament's the first British sovereign ever to do so. It went down a storm with local politicians here. He got a standing ovation at the end. And then when he came to Hamburg today, of course, we had those, let's say, sombre reconciliation engagements this morning involving the Kindertransport Memorial and St. Nikolai Church, heavily bombed during World War II. Him and the German president laid a wreath at that church. But then when he came here to where I was at the Hamburg City Hall, there were thousands of ordinary German citizens here to come out to cheer it for King Charles and Queen Camilla, and of course try and catch a glimpse of them and meet them. Despite the pouring rain which we had earlier on today, they were determined to catch a glimpse of the British King and Queen Consort. I think perhaps many people feared that following the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September last year, that the British monarchy would lose its star power, its global appeal, which is clearly a really good tool for the British government to have potentially in their diplomatic arsenal, as it were, in terms of strengthening relationships between different countries and different organisations. But King Charles and Queen Camilla here have gone down a treat, really. I think their global fame, global presence has really boosted the popularity of the monarchy abroad, and in this post-Brexit Britain, with the Windsor framework only, a month old since that agreement was made, I think it's been a pretty big success, A, for the King and Queen Consorts, but B, for Britain's global relations on the international stage. And of course, this is all happening. Tomorrow marks 5 weeks until the King's coronation, so I think it's a big boost for Buckingham Palace that his first state visit has gone so well, because during the coronation, of course, the eyes of the world are going to be on London and going to be on the King and Queen Consorts as they are crowned in Westminster Abbey.
Absolutely, yes, no, very historic in more ways than one. Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter who's in Hamburg for us. I'm just going to go quickly into the inbox on this, and there's been a little bit of pushback about my derogatory remarks about a Hamburg-based German group of sea shanty singers. This is from Elizabeth, who says that I was shocked and appalled at Patrick's lack of courtesy and diplomacy when it came to talking about the German sea shanty singers. She thinks it should result in an instant dismissal. Patrick is an arrogant individual at the best of times, and at the very least he should be made to apologise. Whilst our king is doing his best to cement relationships with the German people, we certainly do not need such comments as Patrick made. It is shameful, and I, Elizabeth, would like to now deeply and sincerely apologise to that particular group of Hamburg-based German sea shanty singers. I hope we can draw a line under it and move on. Right, there's loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock. In the age of genderbread person, is it over? I'm asking that question after Rishi Sunak ordered an independent review into sex education in schools. And we've got more huge reaction to that huge news that Donald Trump is due in court next week over an alleged illegal payment to a porn star. But first, it's your latest headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's almost 25 to 5. Let's get you up to date with the headlines from the GB newsroom. Britain has joined an 11-nation trans-Pacific bloc in its biggest trade deal since leaving the EU.
We've just agreed one of the biggest trade deals of all time.
Well, after nearly 2 years of negotiations, the UK is now part of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal will cut UK tariffs on cheese, cars, chocolate, gin and whiskey. It is expected to boost the economy by £1.8 billion over 10 years. It will also build new post-Brexit trade links with Brunei and Malaysia. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says the deal provides good opportunities for growth.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle-class consumers will be in this block of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
Oscar Pistorius will not be released early from his jail sentence for killing Riva Steenkamp. The former Paralympian's been denied parole. He is halfway through a 13-year sentence for shooting his girlfriend in South Africa at his home on Valentine's Day in 2013. Ahead of the hearing, Riva's family said they didn't think Pistorius should be released because he had shown no remorse. A man and a woman arrested following a double murder in Cambridgeshire have been released with no further action. A third man remains in custody. The two victims, named locally as 57-year-old Gary Dunmore and his 32-year-old son Josh, died on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether the shootings at separate properties in Sutton and Blundersham were linked to a custody battle. And Ukraine's calling on the UK to deny visas to Russian and Belarusian tennis players for Wimbledon this summer. Earlier, Wimbledon announced it's lifting the ban imposed last year in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russian and Belarusian players now will be able to compete as neutral athletes. However, Ukraine's foreign minister says Wimbledon's decision is immoral. TV online, DAB, plus radio, and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now back to Patrick.
Welcome back. Now, 6 climate activists are being sentenced this afternoon after they invaded the track during last year's British Grand Prix. The protesters from Just Stop Oil were convicted last month of causing a public nuisance. During the trial, the prosecution said their actions posed a risk to the drivers and race officials. TV viewers now will be able to see footage of the incident taking place. So you've got 5 protesters there, hopefully with some multicoloured arrows above their heads in case you couldn't tell them. Spoiler alert, they're not the cars that are whizzing around them. And yes, I mean, people were saying that it could have endangered life, possibly did endanger life, not least their own, it must be said as well. Another individual who has been found guilty was found in a car nearby with a Just Stop Oil banner. So that is why there are 6 of them in total. I am joined now by Eddie, who is a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil. Eddie, great stuff. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Nice to see you again.
Good, yes, good to see you again. Thanks for coming back. So, we are awaiting the verdict when it comes to the sentencing now for these individuals. We were hoping to have had it now, but we haven't. So, do you expect them to go to prison?
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I hope the worst that happens is that they get suspended sentences. But really, I think what we need to be talking about is why did 4 young people, a mother of 4, and a former health and safety officer feel compelled to do this in the first place?
Yeah, no, I get that side of things. I'm wondering about their prospects of employment and things like that afterwards. I mean, they've got a criminal record now. I know a lot of people in Just Stop Oil do as a result of the protests. Is that something that bothers you?
Patrick, you had me on last week, and so I've told you this already, but, 1.5 degrees of warming is now locked in. 2 degrees of warming is likely. If we go over 2 degrees, we could destabilise global civilization. So I think employment prospects are the least of my worries, certainly at the moment.
I'm just going to go back. I've got a list here of things from as far back as 1967, new ice age coming by 2020. We've got the Maldives will be completely underwater by 2018. I was there last year, actually. It's lovely. Only 500 days before climate chaos. That was in 2014. Oil gone in 10 years. That was in 1966. Why should we believe you now?
Well, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to believe the IPCC, who say that, if we don't take emergency action, then we risk any chance of a livable future is gone.
Yeah, what's the difference between the experts that are saying this now and the experts who were saying that we'd all be dead 30 years ago?
Well, we didn't have supercomputers back then.
So supercomputers have changed the game, have they, massively when it comes to
the point is the research has come light years, and with each publication it gets scarier and scarier. So you can cherry pick examples from the past, or you can focus on, what over 11,000 scientists are saying, because that's what the IPCC is. It's made up of 11,000 scientists who are not paid. They review all the peer-reviewed publications that have come out, and they are saying if we do not take emergency action, we're doomed.
So if this lot today are given prison sentences, I know Insulate Britain were at one point, they seem to have stopped now, would that deter someone like yourself from civil disobedience protesting?
Sorry, could you just repeat the question, Patrick?
If the people today, the 6 people who are awaiting sentencing, do get sent to prison, will that deter you from future action?
No, not at all. I mean, I've been to prison before and, prison was not nice, but it's absolutely nothing compared with what we're facing if we go over 1.5 or 2 degrees of warming.
Can I ask, what do you do for work?
I'm a full-time student.
Oh, OK, all right. So have you got a student loan?
I do, yes.
OK, all right. I'm just wondering, because it seems like taxpayers maybe are paying for your education and then paying for you to obviously be fed and watered when you were in prison, and then coming out, we might have to pay for you in the long run, because I don't know how easy it might be to get a job with a criminal record.
Yeah, can we just bring this back to the main issue, which is that we're facing the greatest crisis humanity is ever facing, and we're talking about, a few protesters and taxpayers' money. It's a bit disgraceful.
I'm keen to know a bit about the people who are involved with the protesting and potentially blocking roads and, you know, leading and helping to drive policies as well that are, like we spoke about yesterday, potentially going to disadvantage some of the poorest people in society. We're seeing the people who are going to get clobbered with ULEZ charges, people who are going to have to put heat pumps in their homes, etc., buy electric cars. A lot of the time it is impacting the poorest people in society, and I'm just wondering if you have much of a regard for those people, given some of your actions.
Yeah, of course, and I would love us to have cheaper public transport in this country. I would love for the government to insulate our homes. I would love if we had, you know, a mass rollout of renewable energy, which incidentally is 9 times cheaper than new fossil fuels. So yes, absolutely. But the point is, if the government does not do the right thing and commit to ending new fossil fuel licenses, as I say, we do not have a livable future. And I don't know how many times we need to keep repeating this.
OK, all right. And there's been a new report as well that's come out to say that we could do more to mitigate the results of climate change. So not just all about prevention and, you know, having drastic impacts on people's day-to-day lives, as I've said, a lot of people often at the lower end of the income sector as well there, but actually maybe do more to build things like sea defences and stuff like that. Would you be in favour of that, or just about the mitigation side of things?
Well, we've left it so late that we're going to need both, right? Obviously, we need to mitigate, but obviously we will need to adapt as well, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, OK, all right. So I'm just wondering whether or not, you know, you feel as though we should be spending how much money is the thing I want to know from you. How much money should we be spending when it comes to stopping this? Because if we do want to just stop oil, I think that might mean that we essentially bankrupt ourselves and people might die from various things like famine, etc., because obviously the use of various different fossil fuels has actually helped to elevate a lot of people out of poverty and increase food production and stuff like that. So is it a bit of a hard balancing act for you, that?
Well, there's a sort of hidden detail in your question, which is, you know, how can we possibly afford to save the world, you know?
Yes.
So not a lot of people know this, but, you know, in World War II, I don't know what the figures are for the UK, but in the United States, the United States government spent more money between the years 1942 and 1945 than it had done in real terms in the past 150 years. And that was from the threat of the Axis powers. So we can't say, you know, it's too expensive to save the world, right? I hope that we can agree on that.
OK, all right, look, Addy, I've just got to have one more with you, if that's all right. And I hope you feel like you've made your point there about, you know, your views on the climate change, etc., and all of this stuff. And I am just keen to know, what do you want to do after university? What's your big ambition? What kind of line of work are you going to go into?
My dream is to be a writer, but any vocation, any dream is looking precarious if we don't sort out the climate crisis.
So are you genuinely so fearful that the world is going to end within your lifetime that you don't care particularly about future employment prospects or anything like that? You are just so convinced that you're going to see the end of the world?
Well, I already have decided that I won't be having children because I can't guarantee that there will be a habitable planet for them to grow up into. OK, is that a difficult decision for you? I mean, that's quite a bold decision to make, isn't it? Well, I think it's the moral choice, given the circumstances that we're facing.
So morally, you think it would be wrong to bring more children into this world?
If we don't sort out the climate crisis.
OK, all right. Well, there you go, Eddie. Thank you very much. That's Eddie there. He's a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil. Now... Thanks for having me, Patrick. That's all right, mate. Take care. I'll speak to you soon. Right, so we obviously await the verdicts of that particular case. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? GBViews at gbnews.uk. There you go. So, moving on. Did you know that tomatoes scream when they're cut? Believe it or not, yes. Never say that you don't learn something new when you watch this show. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
OK, welcome back, everybody. Now, Rishi Sunak has ordered an independent inquiry into sex education at school, citing safeguarding concerns, and the inquest comes after the publication of a bombshell policy exchange report, and it said that many schools could be violating their safeguarding commitments by failing to report kids changing or questioning their gender identity. With me now is Lucy Marsh from the Family Education Trust. So, Lucy, thank you very much for joining us again. It is an important update, this, which is obviously why we wanted to revisit it with you. So how do you feel about this? Because the last time that we spoke, it was looking pretty bleak, I think, for parents who, well, frankly, just wanted to be informed if their child had said to their schoolmasters that they wanted to live as a different gender. So is this a bit of a win?
Not particularly a win at the moment. We cautiously welcome this review. However, we do have some serious concerns about the independence of this review. So the Department for Education, the messaging has changed quite a bit over today. So initially we knew that there was a Department for Education review. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has now announced that this review is going to be independent because he's concerned about Gillian Keegan being too soft, perhaps, on what's happening. So it's been announced that a panel of independent experts is going to take over from the work that the Department for Education has already been doing. And the messaging has changed on the DFE website from an independent panel to now that it's an expert panel, and that a education group called Oak National is going to be producing new materials in conjunction with the materials that already exist. So the problem with that is that Oak National, the chairman of trustees of the board of Oak National is Sir Ian Bowcombe, who is the original advisor that the Department for Education used when it introduced compulsory RSE in the first place. So we're worried that this is going to be rehashing the same material, and we need to know how these independent panel of experts is going to be chosen, and are they really independent, would be our question.
Well, that'll be the thing. I think some people would say it's a bit of a step in the right direction. And look, I apologise for how short and sweet this was. I just wanted to get you up for an update, to get your take, because I know that we spoke yesterday about this story and it was a really big one for us yesterday. Yeah. So thank you very much. And you've been holding on the line for us for a while, but it was just great to get your views on it again. Thank you, Lucy. Lucy Marsh there from the Family Education Trust, just reacting to a follow-up that there's going to be some kind of independent report into the fact that children, basically, who go to school and decide that they might want to change gender and the parents won't be told. So there we are. Now, a new study... We're moving on, people. A new study from researchers in Israel has revealed that tomato plants scream when they're picked from their stems. So they emit airborne sounds similar to bubble wrap being popped, and that is detectable from more than 3 feet away and can be heard by animals. So what does this mean for the plant-based diet crowd and their insistence on ethical eating? With me now, I'm very pleased to say, it's another Ed, I think a better Ed there. Ed Winters, who goes by Earthling Ed, is a vegan activist. How are you?
I'm very well, Patrick. How are you?
OK, right, so can you talk me through this? Now, we did check, I did check earlier whether or not it was going to offend you if we had some tomatoes in front of you and if I did remove them from their stem. You said no.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we kind of misrepresented the report a little bit. Right. The word scream isn't cited in the report. OK. Either is the word pain or sentience or suffering. Really, all we discovered was that plants will release certain popping sounds due to what they believe is cavitation, which is basically the releasing of gas. So much like bacteria also emit frequencies, so do plants as well. But it doesn't mean that they suffer or feel pain. So
they don't suffer or feel pain, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are concerned about now, for people who are not wanting to eat meat for ethical reasons. Yeah. You know, there are these occasional reports that seem to pop up about potentially, you know, plants being able to communicate with each other or feel things, etc. What's your view on that, then? Do you think that plants can feel things?
No, they don't have a subjective experience, which is what sentience is, which is what you and I have, and indeed animals have as well. They're intelligent, of course, but so are bacteria and viruses. They're also intelligent. But what I always say to people is, if you're genuinely concerned about plants, let's say that you think, hang on a minute, there's some good evidence that plants suffer. Well, the majority of the plants that we're growing in the UK are being used as animal feed anyway. So even as a vegan myself, I'm actually reducing animal and plant suffering by adopting a plant-based diet at the same time. OK, I mean, that is fascinating. And can I ask, what were the main reasons for you becoming a vegan then? Presumably animal suffering, was it? Yeah, I mean, the question I asked myself is, if I can live in a way that reduces animal suffering, why wouldn't I? And I guess that's maybe a question I could ask you. If you could live in a way that reduces animal suffering, why wouldn't you? I love meat. Yeah? So do you think that the enjoyment of something justifies causing harm to animals? I think it's a tough one, really, because I also look, from my perspective, I get that I'm a massive hypocrite. I don't mind saying this, because I would not want to kill a cow. But you pay someone to do it on your behalf. But I pay someone to do it on my behalf. I regularly order it in a restaurant. I'm trying to think whether or not I had beef last night. I don't think I did last night, but I would eat it, right, all the time. How do you morally justify that, then? I either don't think about it, or justify it on the grounds that me stopping doing it, I don't think would have any impact whatsoever. What if everyone says that, though? What changes then? Well, if everyone does it, then it would stop, wouldn't it? Absolutely. But they're not going to, are they? Well, a lot of people already are. And if we want to create a world which is more ethical and reduces animal suffering as far as is possible, then a shift to veganism is the only way. No, I get that. If everyone went vegan, no, there's no disputing that. If everyone was vegan, then fewer animals would die as a result of human consumption. Yeah, and that would be a good thing, right? I think potentially it would be a good thing, but I would say that I think that there are a lot of nutritional benefits when it comes to eating genuine meat, and I know that people say that they can be replicated in a plant-based diet and all of this stuff. Which nutrients are you referring to? Well, I just think there's lots of proteins, etc., aren't there? And I would be intrigued to know about early years development. So this is one thing that I could probably do with knowing a bit more about. But when it comes to, well, babies and young adults, etc., and toddlers and things like that, you know, is it any more unhealthy for them to not eat any meat? So if they were just reared as vegans or vegetarians, for example, would that have any issue when it came to or animal products, so even things like milk, for example, like, so calcium and all this stuff? Go on, talk me through it. Well, I mean, nutrients are important for everyone at every stage of life, and the important question is whether or not everyone can get those nutrients. Protein's a classic one. You can get more than enough protein in plants. That's supported by the British Dietetic Association, the NHS, the American Dietetic Association, and even on the point of kids, when you look at the body of evidence and you look at the dietetic associations around the world, these are basically the associations where all of the nutrition and dietitian experts are involved in them. They point to the fact that a well-planned plant-based diet is healthy for everyone, including children.
gets wheeled out every now and again is I think avocados are often used as an example of this, aren't they? Where they say, well, by the time that you've grown avocados or you've made way for various different plantation crops and you might have had to have reduced what was originally growing there in some South American country or something and then shipped it over here, when you add it all up, it's been worse for the environment than if I just killed a pig and ate it.
But that's incorrect.
Right.
Pigs in the UK are fed soy as well as other types of feed. The biggest driver of deforestation, the two biggest drivers of deforestation in South America, cattle farming for beef and leather, and also soybeans as well, which the vast majority from South America, 96% in fact, fed to animals in this country.
Just very quick, because we're a bit pressed for time, but how would you, oh, are we out of time? Oh, we are out of time. Oh, I've got to go, otherwise we get booted off air. I'm very, very sorry about all of this, but there we go. We'll have to get you back on. Thank you very much, though. Much appreciated.
You're welcome,
and appreciate you coming into the studio. All right, take care. Right, OK, fantastic. I enjoyed that, actually. Ed Winter's there, who goes by Earthling Ed and is a vegan activist. Right, I've got loads more coming your way, but as we just said, I'm out of time, so I'll see you in the next hour for loads more.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening, everybody. It's just about to go 5 p.m. It's me, Patrick Christys, here with you on GB News for the next hour. And yes, some good news, some great news for Great Britain. We've got a big bumper post-Brexit trade deal. We'll be telling you about what all of that means in terms of the money in your pocket and the wider economy as well, and geopolitical influences. But we're also going to be going stateside because it's massive news from America as former President Donald Trump is potentially going to end up getting arrested and facing his day in court as well over an alleged payment that gift he made to a porn star in America. We'll bring you all the political ramifications for that. His supporters think it's a total witch hunt. And as you were hearing in the last hour as well, 6 Just Stop Oil protesters are going to be sentenced today after they stormed the Silverstone Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix. They could go to prison. We'll have to tell you about that as and when we get it. And finally, yes, this is, of course, the big one that we've been teasing throughout the course of the show. Is there any place for a hash brown in the good old English fry-up, the full English? Because apparently now it's going to have to be biffed because it's American. I always have it. But a lot of you in the inbox so far are saying, Patrick, there is no place for a hash brown in the Great British Breakfast. We'll be talking about all of that and much, much more. Stay tuned. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Get your thoughts coming in thick and fast. I mean, let's obviously start with the hash brown stuff, OK, because that has proved a remarkably popular segment that I've been doing there. So I want that. I also want your thoughts as well on Britain on the world stage after we signed a bumper post-Brexit trade deal. What do you make of all of that? That email again, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But right now, it's your headlines.
Hi there, it's 5:05. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Britain has joined an 11-nation trans-Pacific bloc, its biggest trade deal since leaving the EU.
We've just agreed one of the biggest trade deals of all time.
Well, after nearly 2 years of negotiations, the UK is now part of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal will cut UK tariffs on things like cheese, chocolate, gin and whiskey. It's expected to boost the economy by £1.8 billion over 10 years. And it will also build new post-Brexit trade links with Brunei and Malaysia. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says it provides a good opportunity for growth.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle-class consumers will be in this bloc of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
However, critics say the impact will be limited, with official estimates suggesting the deal will boost the economy by just 0.08%. And the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says it won't help the economy.
Welcome, of course, but recognise the proportion that it actually impacts on our economy. What we need alongside that is a closer trading relationship with the EU. Businesses across the country are crying out for a better deal than the one that the government has put in front of them.
Oscar Pistorius will not be released early from his jail sentence for killing Riva Steenkamp. The former Paralympian's been denied parole. He's halfway through a 13-year sentence for shooting his girlfriend at their home in South Africa on Valentine's Day in 2013. Ahead of the hearing, Riva's family said they didn't think Pistorius should be released because he'd shown no remorse, and nor did they feel he'd been rehabilitated. Donald Trump's become the first US president to face criminal charges after he was indicted by a grand jury in New York. Last night, his supporters gathered in front of his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. New York prosecutors have been investigating the alleged payment of hush money to an adult film star prior to his election in 2016. Now, the payment itself was legal, but Trump allegedly recorded it as a business expense, which is illegal in New York. Mr. Trump says he's innocent, but the Manhattan investigation is just one of several legal challenges the former president's facing. And his former vice president, Mike Pence, has described the situation as an outrage.
It's clear to the overwhelming majority of the American people that this is nothing short of a political prosecution being affected by a Manhattan DA who literally campaigned on bringing charges against one particular American. And I must tell you that that should be offensive to every American, left, right, and center. Every American deserves equal treatment under the law.
A man and a woman arrested following a double murder in Cambridgeshire have been released with no further action. The two victims, named locally as Gary Dunmore, the 57-year-old, and his 32-year-old son Josh, died on Wednesday. The police are investigating whether the shootings at separate properties in Sutton and Bluntisham were linked to a custody battle. A third man remains in custody. 2 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the death of an elderly woman in Suffolk. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield at 2 p.m. on Saturday after reports the 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor following a robbery. 2 boys, aged 15 and 14 from the Lowestoft area, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Ukraine's calling on the UK to deny visas to Russian and Belarusian tennis players for Wimbledon this summer. Earlier, Wimbledon announced it is lifting the ban it imposed last year in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. However, Russian and Belarusian players will now be able to compete as neutral athletes. Ukraine's foreign ministry says the All England's club's decision is immoral. And this is GB News. More as it happens. But now back to Patrick.
OK, so we've got loads more coming from Germany shortly, but now it's a major news for post-Brexit Britain, isn't it? Which is the UK has been accepted into an Indo-Pacific trade bloc, with the government saying that it's achieved the biggest trade deal since we left the EU. So great news for Great Britain. Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch has said that the ascension to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, I mean, it's a snappy title, people, it's a snappy title. It's about the potential for growth tomorrow, with the bloc containing 11 other trading nations. Now, let's just have a quick look at some of the key facts about this deal, all right? So a bit of context. So there are 11 countries in this trade bloc. Those include countries like Australia, Japan and Canada. Put together, those nations' economies represent 13% of the world's total gross domestic product, and the deal gives Britain access to countries with a combined population of more than 500 million people. So, there we go. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? The members of the bloc are required to drop more than 95% of their tariffs on trade. But believe it or not, this hasn't been good news for absolutely everybody. A lot of people are still saying, well, it would only contribute something like 0.08% to our GDP over the course of the next 10 years. It's nothing like what we lost when we left the European Union. So there we go. I decided, well, it's probably time we had a debate on this, isn't it? So with me now is Sunil Sharma, who's the Chief Operating Officer, Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, and John Falch, who is the Northern Coordinator for the Rejoin the EU party. So good stuff, chaps. OK, look, Sunil, I will start with you. And, I mean, clearly, most people are quite happy about this, but some people are saying, well, look, there isn't a massive economic benefit to this deal. Your views?
I think there's a massive economic benefit on this deal, and it's not necessarily clear today. I think it is quite clear in some ways today, but more the long-term potential. So you look at, for example, the European Union's growth forecast for this year, it's around 0.8%. You look at Vietnam, which is more than 6.8%. Malaysia, more than 4%. We're joining a block of countries that are some of the fastest growing emerging economies in the world. And so to be a part of that is nothing but beneficial. So whilst today the benefit may be a certain figure, you can almost guarantee that benefit over the next 4 or 5 years will be substantially more, because these are fast growing economies, unlike the European Union, where their countries are not growing at nowhere near the same speed.
OK, John, how do you respond to that then? The idea that Britain has now shackled itself to the winners of the future and not the losers of tomorrow in the shape of the EU?
I'd say brilliant. You know, sovereignty is a myth. It is the power of the sovereign over us. It's not actually anything that anybody can touch or do anything with. So yes, making a trade deal with other people, great. But let's remember, this is only 2 new countries. It's Brunei and Malaysia. All right, Malaysia make cars. What do Brunei make? They export oil. That's about it. You know, it's going to massively help Malaysia with exporting things like, palm oil to us. And most of these countries are countries with lower wages than us. Peru, Chile, Brunei, etc. They're all low-wage countries. So I don't see quite how that helps. Now, Singapore is in there. Oh, yeah, great. That's where Dyson moved to and took 4,000 UK jobs with him, even though he supported Brexit. Great, wonderful. As I said before, you know, it's only 0.08% of UK GDP. We lost 50 times more by leaving the EU. That's 4% of our GDP, not 0.08.
OK, so that's the case against it, Son. I'll just come back on that then.
Well, if you look at what the CPTP actually brings in terms of the changes into our general economy, so if you're looking at the economy today versus last year or versus the European Union, it's very clear the economy is going to be in a very different place. We're going to focus on many different areas. The data flows that they're looking to bring in is a massive part. Data is the #1 commodity in the world right now, and it's only going to go more. This deal now allows for much greater integration with data flows. You then look at the general economic changes that they're making. You look at the fact that this is a much more flexible, fluid system in comparison to the European Union trade deal that we had. This isn't restrictive for us to now do deals with other countries. There are so many more economic benefits to this, but I'll add another caveat to this as well. We're also joining a bloc that turned down China, and where we have countries here that are quite clearly situated in the Far East that are very close to China. The fact that we are now going to be decoupling away from China, which is the right move, as we've seen with COVID and stuff, and the fact that we're there first and they're not there is a much great thing for our national security. These countries are also vulnerable to the fact of Russian interference. And so the fact that as a Western country, like as powerful as the United Kingdom, is having a much greater power play in the Asia-Pacific region is only beneficial.
I just wondered, John, when you couple this with things like the AUKUS deal, etc., and we were told that Britain's standing on the world stage post-Brexit would be... What's that, John? What are you doing?
Tiny. Absolutely microscopic. That's what this deal is. It doesn't mean anything.
OK, well, for a second, I wondered what you were talking about there, because I've heard that before. But Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore and Vietnam clearly do not feel as though our standing on the world stage has been significantly diminished, John. And, I mean, is this bad news for naysayers like you?
Just remember how they negotiated this, like they negotiated the Australia and the New Zealand deal, which do absolutely nothing for the UK. They massively advantage New Zealand and Australia. Now you've added 2 more countries, which we didn't have trade deals for. Yeah, whoopee. But, you know, they are countries that are massively good at exporting. They're countries with, you know, really low wages. So what's it going to do, this deal? It's going to massively increase UK imports, not exports. Massively increase our imports, and thus drive wages down here because people won't have jobs that will be able to compete. You know, to me, it's horrendous. Now, it's got an extra piece, which I think this endangers the brand new Windsor Agreement on Northern Ireland. We've already got a massive problem in the UK with fake meats, like pork that's just been reported, beef that was done before with horse meat in it and stuff like that. We do not control our imports. The border guards were turned into controlling people rather than goods for a few months ago. How is that going to help? So if we risk tainting the single market in Southern Ireland because we're importing fake goods, maybe rebadging them in the UK to export them as UK made when they're not, which is what's happening, it's going to destroy that deal.
I'll just lob it all back to you then, Sado. Go on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, to be honest, it's condescending what you're saying about these block of countries. Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Canada, Mexico, these are substantial economies. To talk about Japan and say us agreeing a trade deal isn't a powerful, incredible thing is extremely condescending. This is one of the fastest economies in the world, one of the strongest economies in the world, one of the most forward-thinking economies in the world. We're building closer ties to a country that pretty much borders a country that we're trying to decouple away from is nothing but beneficial. But I'll go back into the import and export argument. It's very clear what this deal will do. It will allow our small businesses and medium businesses to expand into these countries. You're looking at the trade today. You're looking at the trade of how much our small and medium businesses trade right now. That's without a block. The whole point of the block is it will expand. So currently right now it's less because we don't have a trade deal. You have a trade deal, so therefore we can now expand into these economies easier. You ask small and medium businesses how hard it is for them to grow their businesses outside of the UK, it is close to impossible. The fact that we've now created a deal that allows them to expand to 11 different countries is incredible and amazing. And the potential is very limitless. And it depends, obviously, a lot of it depends on how well these countries continue to thrive and how continue they do. But all the stats show that these 11 countries are fastly growing and they're moving forward, unlike the European Union, where if you look at their economic forecasts, they are declining year after year.
Look, John, I've got to ask you, obviously, for our radio listeners now, you're wearing a shirt with the EU flag on it. There's an EU flag behind you. You have been shaking your head and being quite dismissive, really, of Britain and this deal and the AUKUS deal, I think, as well. You were calling minute and minuscule earlier on, despite the fact that, I mean, it might literally preserve Taiwan, and clearly a lot of other countries, certainly, including France, by the way, didn't think it was minuscule, did they? Because they were so angry when they weren't a part of it. I've got to ask, John, you hate Britain?
Absolutely not. I don't like Brexit Britain. That's a completely different story. Brexit Britain isn't Britain. This is not what people normally think. If you look in the papers recently, there was a survey done where the majority of people support or respect and believe what the EU say, and don't at all believe what this government says, because this government's told them lie after lie after lie.
Well, yeah, but you can put reports. But John, to be fair, I mean, I've seen that, but you can also put reports from anywhere, and polls from anywhere. I mean, 52% of people back almost wholeheartedly what the government wants to do with the Channel migrant crisis, which doesn't make for pretty reading for you, I imagine, does it? So we can all just pluck things that suits our individual arguments really quite easily off the top of our heads, can't we? But Stella, I'll throw it back to you. Do you think there is just a divide on this, with the people who voted for Brexit are very happy about this deal, and people who wanted us to remain in the EU will always be miserable about it?
I think the vast majority of people will be happy with this deal. As a country, we're expanding into new markets. It's amazing. It's great news. How far this goes, no one will be able to tell. No one can give you... We can all pluck figures in January. We just look at the pure facts and data. We're part of 11 countries, more of a countries where we're not tied down in any sort of political union, that we're flexible, fluid trade deals. There's a reason why so many countries have been queuing up to be a part of this process, to be a part of the CTPPP, and there's a reason why it's great news for us. I think the only people that will be unhappy with this deal are the same people who cannot accept the referendum result from 2016 and are not prepared to move on. They're the only people. Other than that, even if you voted Brexit, Remain, whatever, if you want the best interests of this country, this trade deal is only positive.
OK. All right, well, look, both of you, thank you very much. We're going to have to knock it on the head there, but it's been great chatting to you. Cyril Sharma there, Chief Operating Officer at Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, and John Falch, who is Northern Coordinator for Rejoin the EU Party. So there we go. That's a reaction there to our post-Brexit trade deal. One of them very happy, one of them definitely very not. Oh, yes, OK, some breaking news now. And it's the story we've been covering extensively on this show this afternoon. Here we go. 6 Just Stop Oil protesters have been spared jail for their parts in a track invasion which disrupted last year's British Grand Prix. I'm going to read that again. So 6 Just Stop Oil protesters have been spared jail for their parts in a track invasion which disrupted last year's British Grand Prix. 5 of them invaded the track during the race, while a 6th person was found in a car park with glue cable ties and a Just Stop Oil banner. When they were convicted last month of causing a public nuisance, they were warned that they could be jailed, but obviously they have not been jailed. So there you go. That's the breaking news. Just Stop Oil activists have been spared jail. Our TV viewers now will be able to see the moment itself where they stormed the track and were dragged off. OK, so there we go. We will bring you more on this story as and when we get it, a bit more detail. So if there was a judge's summing up, etc., that news has just come to us. So bear with us and we'll get you a bit more detail on that. But now, to a huge story coming out of the United States. Donald Trump says that he's completely innocent after he became the first former president to face criminal charges. Trump was indicted by a grand jury in Manhattan last night. The case revolves around a payment of around £105,000 made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016. Daniels says that she had an affair with Trump. He denies all of this stuff. He's expected to appear in court in New York early next week. With me now is the fantastic Peggy Grant, who is the executive assistant to President Ronald Reagan. Peggy, how are you?
Terrific. Thank you, Patrick, for having me on, even though this is really a sad and scary day in America. I mean, we're looking at the weaponization of government, and whether you love or hate Donald Trump, if you love justice, you have to hate what's happening out of New York right now.
OK, so explain to me and our viewers and our listeners why this is such a concerning thing, because for a lot of people looking at it, they might go, well, hey, if he's broken the law, then he's just like anyone else and he has to face the consequences. What's going on?
Right. Well, we agree, everybody agrees that nobody is above the law, but we don't think that the law should be weaponized to target political opponents. And what we see in this particular case is something that the statute of limitations ran out on long ago. And so this DA, Alvin Bragg, who is Soros-backed and soft on crime, has somehow magically made this from a state misdemeanor of what would be considered an illegal misdemeanor of a business filing, and somehow has magically elevated it to a federal felony and not even paid any attention to the statute of limitations. So it's a political witch hunt. It's un-American. And Donald Trump has warned us all along. This is not just about him. It's about all of us who stand with him, and support the rule of law. And so all of this is happening while in New York, what do we see? We see crime running rampant. We see the same DA taking felony criminals and downgrading their sentences to misdemeanors, releasing them on the streets to commit crimes again. So nothing that he's doing is making life safer or better for New Yorkers. And it certainly is undermining our whole system of justice here in the United States.
OK, all right. So what do you expect to see going forward? Do you think there'll be widespread protests? Because there are concerns, I suppose, especially after January the 6th, that there could be issues.
Right. And we've seen them consistently go after Donald Trump and be wrong, from the Russia hoax to the impeachment to the January 6th to the raid on Mar-a-Lago. There's been unequal application of justice. And Lady Justice is supposed to be blind. She's peeking under her blindfold and tipping the scales, depending on whether she's looking at a Democrat or a Republican. So I do expect that we are going to see great unity in the Republican Party surrounding this criminal prosecutor who has gone after a man who has claimed his innocence. And by the way, Stormy Daniels signed a letter years ago saying that she didn't have any part in this either. And so both sides had said there's nothing here.
It does look weird, Peggy. It does look weird, Peggy, because, look, shortly on I'm going to run through some tweets. And one of them is by Stormy Daniels, who is making money out of this. She is making money. She's selling merchandise. And that merchandise is flying off the shelves so quickly, she is saying, oh, sorry if there's a delay in shipping, which I think should ring alarm bells for a few people, realistically. But who am I to get in the way of the incredibly capitalist nature of America, of course. But do you think that this will mean that Donald Trump is going to be a shoo-in at the next election? Could it really be a gift for Trump and for the Republicans?
Well, he certainly will get some tailwinds going behind him, because this will unify the party around him. Even Elon Musk tweeted, I think if Trump is indicted, he may be our next president. But, when you're talking about tweets, we look at the danger of that as well. And sometimes the left accidentally shows exactly who they are. And I don't know if you were going to get to Nancy Pelosi's tweet, but part of what she tweeted today was she said, no one is above the law and everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. But that's scary stuff, because at the core of our American judicial system is the presumption of innocence. He doesn't have to prove his innocence. He is innocent. They have to prove his guilt. And so sometimes the other side says the part that they didn't mean to say out loud. And Nancy Pelosi did that. This is scary banana republic stuff. Stalin said, show me the man and I'll find the crime. That's the level this has gone to. Their absolute hatred for this man, and by proxy then their hatred for Americans who put America first.
Yeah, look, Peggy, thank you very, very much. Always great to chat, and good luck to you. Hopefully we'll chat again very, very soon. That's Peggy Gron there, as the Executive Assistant to President Ronald Reagan. Now, Trump was backed by some of his biggest allies within a few minutes of the news initially breaking. Matt Gaetz, a Florida congressman, who's been relentless in the defence of the former president, tweeted, President Donald Trump always fought for us. He puts the American people above corrupt interests. For that reason alone, the powerful will never stop coming for him. A majority of Americans know Alvin Bragg, that's the individual who's going to be doing the prosecuting. Alvin Bragg's witch hunt is a politically motivated prosecution. I continue to stand with President Trump as he always stood with us. We'll go to Georgia now, because Congresswoman there, Marjorie Taylor Greene, another key ally, let loose. She said President Trump is innocent, but not everyone is unhappy with the news, because Trump's own niece, who they have a long record of not getting along, Mary Trump, posted a long tweet which included the words, for the victims of Donald, this is finally some measure of justice. She goes on to say that this is good after everything Donald put the country through. We have prevailed, she says. And it looks as though, as I was alluding to before, Stormy Daniels, the lady at the centre of all of this, was already making money from this news. She tweeted, thank you to everyone for your support and love. I have so many messages coming in that I can't respond. Also, don't want to spill my champagne. Team Stormy merchandise and autograph orders are pouring in too. Thank you for that as well, but allow a few extra days for shipment. So there we go. I mean, come on. Anyway, right, moving on now. Gwyneth Paltrow is worth a reported $200 million. Grief, can you imagine? I'd be dead in a week if I had $200 million. But she woke up this morning with $1 more to her name. Puzzled? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. And we've got all of that coming your way. We're also going to be having a load of discussions as well. And delving into the inbox, it is Friday, so we're going to keep it a little bit more light-hearted for you as well. I was asking you whether or not hash brown has got any place in a full English, because apparently the Great British Breakfast Society is looking to ban hash browns because they have no place in a full English. I'm pro hash brown, but a lot of you are not. GB Views at gbnews.uk. I'm Patrick Christys. I'll see you in a tick.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Let's get an update on the breaking news that I brought you earlier this hour. So 6 Just Stop Oil protesters have been spared jail for their parts in a track invasion which disrupted last year's British Grand Prix. 3 of the 6 defendants were given suspended prison terms. The 3 others were given 12 months community orders. 5 of the activists invaded the track during the race. Our TV viewers can see the moment that it happened now as they stormed that track with Formula 1 cars whizzing around them. A 6th person was found in a car park nearby with glue, cable ties and a Just Stop Oil banner. Mr Justice Garnham told the 6 Just Stop Oil protesters that they had created a risk of death or serious injury, though he did say the likelihood of harm occurring had been relatively modest. So just to whiz you back in, that is, of course, the breaking news there, which is that those 6 Just Stop Oil activists who stormed onto a Formula One track have been spared. Joe, what do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Let me know what you think. Do you think that doing something like that should mean that you get a prison sentence? Do you think that actually, you know, community orders, suspended sentences, I mean, they're still punishments, aren't they? GBviews at gbnews.uk. But yes, I have got loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. There's the full story from the bizarre court case that's left multi-millionaire Gwyneth Paltrow $1 richer. We have got a highlight, or should it be lowlight reel of that, and we will debate whether or not Donald Trump is the victim of a witch hunt. We are going to have a debate on that, so we're going to go head-to-head, voices for Trump and against Trump, as it could well be that the former president of the United States does actually have to have his mugshot taken and his fingerprints taken as well. People are saying that it's a witch hunt. What do you make of all of that? But right now, though, it's your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, it is bang on 5:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says Britain's new trade deal will help unlock the benefits of Brexit for people across the UK.
We've just agreed one of the biggest trade deals of all time.
Well, yes, that's right. Britain has joined an 11-nation trans-Pacific bloc. It is the biggest trade deal since leaving the EU. It will cut UK tariffs on cheese, cars, things like chocolate and machinery, with reduced red tape as well. And it's expected to boost the economy by £1.8 billion over 10 years. However, critics say the impact of that will be limited as it represents less than 1% of UK GDP. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, though, believes it's a good opportunity for growth.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle-class consumers will be in this bloc of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
Oscar Pistorius will not be released early from his jail sentence for killing Reva Steenkamp. The former Paralympian's been denied parole. He is 36-year-old, halfway through a 13-year sentence for shooting his girlfriend at their home in South Africa on Valentine's Day in 2013. Ahead of the hearing, Reva's family said they didn't think he should be released early, as he'd shown no remorse. A man and a woman arrested following a double murder in Cambridgeshire have been released with no further action. A third person, a man, remains in custody. The two victims, named locally as 57-year-old Gary Dunmore and his 32-year-old son Josh, died on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether those shootings at separate properties were linked to a custody battle. Ukraine's described Wimbledon's decision to lift its ban on Russian and Belarusian tennis players this summer as immoral. They will now be able to compete as neutral athletes. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has urged the UK to deny those players visas. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
OK, ladies and gentlemen, loads coming your way now in the last half an hour of the show, including a new study that has shown that if you don't go to university, you're able to retire sooner, which I think is probably good news for people who decided not to get a degree. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking, of course, about this one right now. One of the big stories of the day, which is Donald Trump saying he's completely innocent after he was indicted by a grand jury. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges, and the case revolves around a payment of around £105,000 made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016. Now, Daniels says that she had an affair with Trump. He denies this. He's expected to appear in court in New York early next week. With me now is Bob Weiner, who was a presidential spokesperson for Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, and Dr. Jan Harper-Hayes, who's a political psychologist and commentator. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. It's ladies first here, OK? So I'm going to start with Dr. Jan. Look, what do you make about this, then? Do you think that President Trump will actually end up facing a proper criminal prosecution? I mean, supposedly he could face prison.
Well, let's not go that far. He's been indicted. It doesn't mean he's guilty.
I think that, one, this is going to be his walk of fame. This is going to bring even more support for him because they think he's being treated so unfairly. I don't know if you're aware, but Hillary Clinton, her campaign manager, revealed in court when her lawyer was indicted that her campaign funded the Russia hoax. And so she charged that off as a campaign expenditure, and she had to pay a fine to the Federal Election Commission. One of the things that is really getting, I was going to say getting the goat of people, but is that why are the Democrats let off easier, and why are they after Trump? And I think that is something that's really important because they're afraid of him. They're afraid of all the evidence he has.
All right.
And they're afraid of what...
I'll cut in now because I'll bring Bob in and then I'll go back to you. Bob, that's the case, isn't it? People saying that this is a witch hunt. Your views, Bob?
Oh, we're so afraid of Trump and the three losses, the major losses that he has incurred and brought to his party and to the country, where he can't win anymore. If DeSantis has anything right, it's that Trump is a loser. And so we're not afraid of Trump. In fact, I kind of like him, although you got to be careful what you want. Here's the thing. This is a matter of fact. It is a matter of evidence. It is a matter of 30 checks that will be released. Each one is going to be a separate count with the 30 counts of the indictment on this case. Then he has to look forward to, he has the Atlanta, find me 11,780 votes. And guys, don't change. You can change it. Nobody will know or care if you change the results. And then he's got Jean Carroll, the rape allegation that the judge insisted, yes, that court case goes through. And then he's got Mar-a-Lago files. He's got the January 6th inciting an insurrection and fake electors. And he's got the New York over-evaluations. This guy, this is only the beginning of what this guy, and here's the thing that the media does. It uses the facts and makes those the case. Kevin McCarthy said, we brought her poll numbers down. When the media reports what is going on here with Trump and all the facts, he's going to drop like a rocket and he will get no independents and no Democrats, and he's through, and he will lose every general election again, as he already has the last three.
Right, well, that's strong stuff. I'll let you come back on that then, because that's very much the other side of it, Dr. Jan. What do you make of what Bob Weiner had to say there?
Well, I understand where he's coming from, and some people actually do think that. But when you're on our side of the fence and you really listen to people and you understand what is going on behind the scenes, then I will look forward to having another conversation with him to prove him wrong in what he said.
OK, all right, Bob, I mean, I'll give the final word to you. I am very, very intrigued by the fact that you're, of course, the former presidential spokesperson for Bill Clinton. So, with respect, Bob, you know a thing or two about a sex scandal.
I was subpoenaed by Ken Starr. Let me just make this joke, which is fully inappropriate, but Jay Leno said only in the Clinton oral sex case would there be a Weiner testifying.
Good stuff. I've got to be honest with you, my heart was in my mouth for a second there, Bob, but you just about got us through it. Lovely stuff. I'm going to leave it there. Look, both of you, thank you very much. And I'll tell you what we'll do is we will wait for more information to come out on all of this, and we'll have you both back on and we can revisit it for round two, OK? Thank you very, very much. That is Bob Weiner there, who's the former presidential spokesperson for Bill Clinton and George Bush, and Dr. Jan Harper-Hayes there, who's a political psychologist and commentator. Right, so whether or not you think it's a Donald Trump witch hunt, etc., that's entirely up to you, isn't it? Oscar-winning actress Gwyneth Paltrow, though, has won her civil court case against a man who claimed that she crashed into him while skiing. If you're new to this, where have you been? It's yet another absolutely bonkers court case. Ms Paltrow was awarded $1 in damages after a jury found retired optometrist Terry Sanderson was at fault for the accident. 100% at fault, by the way, it's worth saying, which took place in Utah in 2016. Lisa Hartle has been looking back on what was, at times, a truly bizarre trial.
The court case that's gripped people around the world. Hollywood actress Gwyneth Paltrow and retired optometrist Terry Sanderson both accusing the other of causing a collision while skiing in Utah in 2016.
I just remember everything was great, and then I heard something I've never heard at a ski resort, and that was a blood-curdling scream. Just, I can't do it. It was, and then, boom. And it was like somebody was out of control and gonna hit a tree and was gonna die. And that's what I had until I was hit.
That's what was going on in your mind.
Overruled?
That's what's going on in your mind when you hear that scream.
Gwyneth Paltrow told the court she thought she was being sexually assaulted on the slope.
I was skiing and two skis came between my skis, forcing my legs apart, and then there was a body pressing against me, and there was a very strange grunting noise. So my brain was trying to make sense of what was happening. I thought, is this a practical joke? Is someone like doing something perverted? This is really, really strange. My mind was going very, very quickly, and I was trying to ascertain what was happening.
Okay.
Mr. Sanderson was suing the actress for $300,000, claiming he was left with broken ribs and a permanent traumatic brain injury. Gwyneth Paltrow was countersuing for $1 and legal fees. Terry Sanderson was asked why he sent an email to his daughters after the incident with the subject line, "I'm famous."
Why did you write, "I'm famous"?
You know, again, my head was scrambled. All I was trying to do is desperately communicate with my kids before they heard from somebody else I got crushed. So I didn't pick my words well.
Some pleasant exchanges between Mr. Sanderson's attorney and Gwyneth Paltrow flooded the internet.
Probably had a better ski outfit, though, I bet.
I still have the same one. I was yelling at him.
Pretty loud, pretty forceful.
I was pretty upset.
Right? You're
Yeah.
small but mighty. Actually, you're not that small.
A neurologist called by Miss Paltrow's defence said, in their opinion, scans of Mr. Sanderson before and after the collision did not reveal a brain injury, whilst another doctor said the depression and anxiety could be caused by the stress of the trial. Neither would have thought that a moment on the slope 7 years ago would be played out in detail in this Utah courtroom for the world to see. Lisa Hartle, GB News.
Right, OK, I mean, yes, thus ends yet another bonkers US court case, doesn't it? But look, a bit closer to home, I'm going to be having a chat with you about numerous different things. I just want to go into the inbox quickly there before I do, gbviews@gbnews.uk, because we had that breaking news just moments ago, didn't we, that those 6 Just Stop Oil protesters who stormed onto the track at the British Grand Prix have been spared jail. I was asking you what you made of all of this. Linda's been on. Not surprised. We've seen all too often how politicised some of our judges have become. And there we go. OK, all right, so that's one view there. Keep yours coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I've got a lot coming your way. I'm going to be talking to you about potholes, by the way, because you will not believe the lengths that one chap has gone to fill a pothole. I'll be joined by Mr. Pothole. I make no excuses for being obsessed with potholes. And in other news, did you go to university? Well, I've got some bad news for you. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, if you didn't go to university, then you might be in luck, because news outlets are reporting that people in manual labour jobs may be able to claim their pension earlier than graduates, so retire earlier, basically. And the government is looking at increasing that retirement age to, frankly, everybody else. But an official review recommends exemptions for people with manual labour jobs based on their natural lifespan of their career. With me now is Charlie Mullins, who's an entrepreneur and the founder of Pimlico Plumbers, and a man who's done rather well for himself. Charlie, you all right?
Yeah, all good, thank you, Patrick. Yeah.
Good stuff. OK, so what do you reckon to this, then? Do you think that this should be another boost for people who think, I'm not going to go to university, I'm not going to saddle myself with thousands in debt, and I'm going to retire earlier?
Yeah, it would certainly be a big incentive, because it'll stop more and more people going to university knowing that they're going to have to work longer. And I feel that with manual workers, tradespeople, they can't really do that job much more than 65, like, you know, at the place they would want to go. But actually sort of, you know, too difficult, it would create further health problems. So I think it's the right move. I mean, undoubtedly, people have worked hard all their life and they deserve to retire at the right age. The other lot, the university lot, you know, some of them have not worked so hard. Obviously not all of them, but some of them have just been, you know, pushers or keyboard warriors, and they can go on a few more years. And unfortunately, it's probably payback time to help the hard-working people that can't continue.
All right, Charlie, it's a little bit of a bad line. I'm just going to give it one more go for you. Sorry about this. I just want to make sure I get what you had to say there, really, which is, so would you recommend people coming up now who are thinking of leaving school soon and stuff, would you really recommend for them to try and go into some kind of practical trade as opposed to going to university?
Yeah, very, very much so, because many reasons, as we've said before, regarding the debt, and certainly now it's a big incentive to think that you can retire at 65 or 66 rather than continue to the one that they're trying to bring out 68, because it'd be a big incentive to get more people away from university. And, you know, certainly the tradespeople and manual workers that have worked hard all their life, they can't continue to do that over the age of 65. It would just be impractical. So I think it's a good boost for skilled workers and manual workers.
Good stuff. Charlie, look, thank you very much. And you are a fantastic advert for an individual as well, who, of course, has done incredibly well for themselves and has, I hope anyway, managed to retire quite young. Charlie Mullins there is an entrepreneur and the founder of Pimlico Plumbers. Good lad. OK, right. OK, so we've just about got time now. Finally, let's get to one of my favourite stories. A man has been filling potholes in his area with pot noodles. Mark Morell, who goes by the name of Mr. Pothole, is campaigning to raise awareness for the amount of potholes across the country. And I make no excuses, ladies and gentlemen, for being utterly obsessed by potholes. Mark Morell, also known as Mr. Pothole, joins me now. And what a proud man he is. Thank you very much. So, you've been filling in potholes with pot noodles. Why?
Well, it's a stunt to draw attention. Over the 10 years of campaigning, I've done all sorts of things, ducks in potholes and fishing from potholes and birthday cakes. And when Pot Noodle said about working together, I thought, what a good idea, and a better way to highlight things light-heartedly, because nothing fills a whole lot of Pot Noodle.
Why do you care so much about potholes, Mr. Pothole?
Well, we discussed before in the past, I mean, this is getting quite regular, Patrick, once a week for the last few weeks. One cyclist is killed or seriously injured a week on our roads as a result of potholes, and over 70 bikers are killed or seriously injured as a result of badly maintained roads. Plus, it's costing the UK economy billions of pounds each year. The poor old road user, taxpayer, is paying a fortune to keep their vehicle on the road roadworthy. Yet our roads are causing them to be hit in the pocket with unnecessary costs. Lack of investment over decades means our roads have actually got to a point where I've never seen them as bad. The government need to resurface our roads. And we've had the Chancellor talking about increasing fuel duty next year. We're going to resurface our roads before we put our duties up, mate.
Can I just ask, why don't we have, like, rapid response pothole units? Because the problem is vast, and isn't there millions to be made? You are obsessed with potholes, Mr. Pothole. Why don't you set up a company where people can call you and you go and fill in the pothole, and you don't have to talk to me on a Friday evening. You'd be in the Maldives counting millions.
Yeah, like the idea, Patrick, and if the government invested into it, I think there's a good thing to be said from it. But really, it just needs that investment. I mean, but the idea is to get people to report the potholes, but use social media, and it's safe to do so, photograph it, tag in the local council, tag in Pot Noodle and myself, and let's see if we can get some rapid response to pothole repairs by the authorities that should be doing it in the first place.
Just one last one. I've got to know this about you. Do you, I don't know, I mean, are you on the dating scene? Do you, how often do you bring up the idea, you know, do you use the fact that you are Mr. Pothole for clout?
No, I try to keep it very low-key. It's only the alter ego of using Twitter. If I could retire tomorrow, I would do, Patrick. I'm quite happy to do so.
But it's a curse.
But I'd need commitment from government.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you very much, but always a pleasure. And good luck, Mark Morell, is also known as, yes, Mr. Pothole. Right, OK, so, well, it's been a bit more of a light-hearted show than usual today, I think. Thank you very much to everybody who's been taking part in it. Jubes & Co is up next with Michelle Dewberry, who is here.
Hello, right? I loved him.
He's great, isn't he?
I would marry him if he was single.
Would you? Well, he might be. I mean, I didn't actually ask.
He's proactive. He's taking matters into his own hand. He's been innovative with his hands, his words, his weapons. That doesn't sound right. With his
I'm going to let you keep talking
materials.
Now. See where we end
you
up.
know what I mean. I listened to that and I thought, what a guy.
Yeah. OK. Good stuff. Good stuff.
I found out the other day someone who works in this company, shall remain nameless. They actually had a first birthday party for a pothole.
Oh, good.
And it was featured in the local newspaper as well. They got a present for it, some birthday cake.
Fantastic. Right, you mentioned birthday cake there. That's food. Now, I want to round this off. In my inbox, I've been asking you all throughout the course of this show whether or not you think that hash browns have got any place in a full English, OK? And by far and away, most people have said no, they don't. The Great British Breakfast Society, or whatever the heck they're called, are saying that it needs to be biffed because it's American. Where do you stand? You don't like never eating a hash brown,
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
How can you say it look like
a vegan breakfast?
This is how I know you don't watch Jubes & Co, Patrick. You tell me you watch it, you evidently do not. Because it was only, I don't know, probably about 3 days ago that I was whining about the price inflation of a hash brown that I eat every single week. It's gone up from 99p to £1.69.
Well,
you would have known that if
You've
you
called
actually
me out now.
Watch
yes.
Tubes & Co. Anyway, I think that's a great story. I'm going to be asking my guests about that. So I'll reserve my judgment, if you don't mind, and you'll have to watch. The word is watch, Patrick.
Sorry.
Or listen.
You can listen, yes.
I know you've got a social life, you young whippersnapper.
Barely these days.
So if you want to go out, you can take me with you. You can listen to me on the radio.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm going to start doing on these handovers with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to start quizzing you on content that has occurred on my programme, because I ask you, do you watch and listen to Jubes? You tell me you do, and I don't believe you.
No. No, in my defence, I'm often travelling home at the time, so it's
There's
a bit
thing
tricky.
called the radio.
But if I was to watch and listen tonight, you've got about 20 seconds to tell me what I may indeed be treated to, so...
There's loads of stuff on the agenda. Do you think we should renationalise water companies? And there's a really stark warning, right, that I think all of us need to pay attention to. It comes from a collection of Britain's top bosses, and they're warning us that humanity might be at risk.
Not the end of humanity. On that note, happy weekend, everybody. Patrick, Christys, see you next week.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. The wind in the south will ease during the rest of the day and it'll be drier for many overnight, but still some cloud and rain to talk about on this final day of March. In fact, for some southern parts of England, it's likely to be the dullest March on record. Low pressure after low pressure has pushed across southern areas through this month, and the final day is no different. It peels away into the North Sea, leaving behind a legacy of cloudy skies and outbreaks of rain. The rain overnight consolidates into a band from western parts of Northern Ireland into South Wales and central southern England, with further dribs and drabs of rain and drizzle into the east. But in between, some drier spells, a lot of cloud, any clear spells confined to the northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a grey and damp start to the weekend. A lot of low cloud, especially in the east, covering some of the hills of northeast England and eastern Scotland. Still, some of that rain to come for western parts of Northern Ireland into South Wales, turning more showery as it